Good evening, and welcome to the July 25th, 2017 regular meeting of the Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. And I know that we ran out at one point, so if you didn't get one earlier, there are more out by the front. Additionally, the agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city's website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission. The roles and responsibilities of the Planning Commission are outlined on the reverse side of tonight's agenda. State law establishes planning commissions. The commission is comprised of 9 members, all of whom have volunteered to serve. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council. The other individuals seated at the table this evening are representatives of the city's planning department, the city attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman Associates. If you wish to address the Planning Commission, please come forward when recognized and provide your name and address on the sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All marks are to be addressed.
Someone took the sign-in sheet.
It's going around.
Okay, you can sign in as you come up and are recognized. Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was my misunderstanding.
We'll continue. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission, not to anyone else in the room. At this time, I ask that all cell phones, Blackberries, PDAs, or any other devices that might disrupt this meeting, please either be placed in silent mode or be turned off. Mr. Salvador, the roll call, please.
Mr. Apahedian. Ms. Cruz.
Here.
Mr. Edmonds.
Here.
Mr. Faison.
Here.
Mr. Hudson.
Here.
Mr. Krent.
Here.
Ms. Koopa.
Here.
Mr. Sanzika.
Here.
Mr. Tagle.
Here.
Ms. Howe.
The next item is the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting. Motion from Mr. Sanzika,
I'll second.
second from Mr. Krent. Ready for the roll call?
Ms. Cruz.
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds.
Yes.
Mr. Faison.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Krent.
Yes.
Ms. Koopa.
Yes.
Mr. Sanzika.
Yes.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Thank you. The next item is the approval of the minutes of the July 11th, 2017 Planning Commission regular meeting. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes? Mr. Edmonds?
I move to approve as published.
Thank you. A second? Ms. Koopa?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Edmonds.
Yes.
Mr. Faison.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Krent.
Yes.
Ms. Koopa.
Yes.
Mr. Sanzika.
Yes.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Ms. Cruz.
Yes.
Okay. The next item is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. So does anyone have any comments for items that are not on tonight's agenda? There appear to be none. Item number 5 is the Zoning Board of Appeals report.
Yeah, it's my report. So we had 3 items on the docket at our last ZBA meeting. One of them was postponed to be the 3rd because the applicant was looking for a full ZBA. We did not have all 7 members there. So the first 2 that we addressed, one was to grant a square footage and height variance. We only did the square footage variance. Everyone was aligned on that on the ZBA. And then the second one was for a setback. The property was shaped a little bit differently, and so unanimously we agreed to grant the applicant the ability to build a sunroom instead of the deck. The applicant was doing it on behalf of the owner of the property, and so she did not want to be on the deck, and so we granted that one. The third one had been before the ZBA a couple of times already. It was the square footage of was supposed to be 7,500 for 2 lots, but the 2 properties were built on, the developer, Gary Abathira, wanted it to be on 7,200, and we had quite a bit of discussion around that, and 4-2, we voted for the development to go forward. It was a very hard decision.
Any questions? Item number 6 is the Downtown Development Authority DDA report.
Mr. Chairman, there was no DDA meeting this month. However, I should note that last night, City Council approved the Quality Development Initiative, or QDI, for a parking deck project at 888 West Big Beaver. This is an initiative that was put forward by the Downtown Development Authority and recommended for approval, and again, it was approved last night.
Okay, thank you. Item number 7 on the agenda is the Planning and Zoning report.
You'll remember the Planning Commission made a recommendation to approve Troy Crossing PUD. It's a mixed-use project located on the north side of Big Beaver, a little bit east of John R. That item was announced at City Council last night and will be going before City Council for a public hearing on August 7th. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Item number 8 on the agenda is a public hearing. Preliminary site plan review, file number SP JPLN 2017-0012, proposed Davis site condominium, north side of East Long Lake, east of Livernois, 285 East Long Lake, Section 10, currently zoned R1B, one-family residential district. Mr. Carlisle?
Good evening to the Planning Commission and to the public. Tonight, the first item for consideration is the receipt of a 14-unit cluster development. The proposed cluster is located on a 5-acre site off Long Lake, just east of Livernois. The applicant proposes to maintain the existing house on the site and add 13 additional housing units. The applicant, as noted, proposes a cluster development. The minimum square footage lot area in this zoning district is 1,500. However, through the cluster, the applicant is proposing to develop all the lots at approximately 6,600 square feet in lot area. The applicant proposes 3 housing varieties, including a ranch, a 1.5-story, and a traditional colonial. The house sizes range from 2,000 square feet ranches to 4,000 square foot colonials. We do note that the applicant has submitted a parallel plan. The parallel plan is used to determine the base density under which the cluster will be reviewed. The parallel plan shows a base density of 10 units. The applicant is seeking 4 additional units through the cluster development option. To get the 4 extra units, the applicant is proposing 2 different mechanisms in the cluster. The first is they're proposing a 30% open space requirement. 30% of the open space would be held in common ownership to be maintained and owned and controlled by the homeowners association. That gets them 3 additional units, and they're asking for a 4th unit by the provision of bioswales through the sustainable design option. The Planning Commission tonight is to consider if the bioswales do meet the requirement or justify the extra unit as being offered by the applicant, or being proposed by the applicant. In regards to the layout of the site cluster itself, we do note a few site discrepancies. The first is lot 14, which is located in the southwest corner of the site, does not meet the perimeter setback requirement as set forth in the cluster ordinance. The perimeter setback for this development is 45 feet, and lot 14 is only 22 feet from the edge of the property line. You can see it in the overhead diagram. Where's my red button? There, right in this approximate location. They're required 45 feet, and they're only proposing 22 feet. The second site deviation is lots 1 through 13, so essentially all the lots that are located within that internal private road do not meet the garage door setback requirement. You are required a setback of 25 feet for garage doors. The purpose behind that is to allow for a car to be parked at the edge of the driveway, the edge of the garage door, so it doesn't overhang into the sidewalk. The applicant is proposing 20 feet setbacks for all the houses, so they're asking for a 5-foot deviation from that requirement as well. We should note that the Planning Commission is able to make a recommendation to the City Council to waive or vary these deviation requests, but such requests should be considered in light of the proposed development in front of the Planning Commission. In regards to open space, we do note the applicant is providing 30% open space. The open space is located in a perimeter collar, I would say, around the outside of the development. This in totality equals 30%. Within that 30% open space, the applicant is proposing to maintain or preserve 2 landmark trees and 13 woodland protected trees. The tree compensation actually exceeds the requirement as set forth in our woodland ordinance, so they do not have to mitigate any additional trees on site. As noted, the applicant has submitted 3 building types. They range in square footage from approximately 2,000 to 4,000 square feet. However, we do note that the elevations do predominantly have a garage door dominated front, which is contrary to the requirements of the ordinance as well. We call them snout nose houses, but basically the garage door sticks out in front of the front facade. Again, that's not permitted in the cluster ordinance provisions. We do note, as the Planning Commission reviews the cluster in front of you tonight, there are standards that have been adopted to consider. These standards include, is the preservation of natural resources, is the preservation of natural resources unavoidable without using the cluster option? Is the applicant using innovative and creative site design? Is the appropriate buffer between adjacent uses sufficient? Has the applicant provided a compatible mix of open space, landscape, and pedestrian amenities? Has the applicant used sustainable design features? Is the density commensurate with the benefit as proposed to achieve such bonus? And lastly, is the architecture, form, scale, and massing consistent with adjacent properties? Those are the standards under which the Planning Commission should consider the application. However, we also do note, to frame the discussion for the Planning Commission, we do note a couple of questions that the Planning Commission should consider. The first is, has the applicant creatively designed the site to either preserve significant natural resources or provide quality open space? 2, does the use of bioswales justify the 1 additional unit as requested by the applicant? 3, based on site layout, is the perimeter setback deviation for lot 14 warranted? 4th, based on the site layout, is the deviation for the garage setback for 13 units, is that justified? And lastly, are elevation revisions required or warranted based on the garage dominated front elevations? So with all that being said, we do note this is a public hearing. The Planning Commission should open such and allow for public comment. We do note that the Planning Commission is a recommending body on this matter. Eventually, it goes up to the City Council for consideration. So after the public hearing, the Planning Commission should consider the application, and they may either require changes to the application or they may submit a recommendation to the City Council for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. So I'd like to open it up for questions amongst the Planning Commission. Mr. Edmonds?
Mr. Sabaton, has the applicant seen the report from Carlisle Walton, just referred tonight?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Tagle?
Mr. Carlisle, could you talk a little bit about the benefits of open space that is benefit to the community or to a development, and how this may or may not really achieve that? And again, what I'm getting at, that it appears that the open space is a perimeter around the backyards of all these units, and I guess I'm needing some help understanding how that benefits this development as far as a community benefit.
Yeah, and that's a great question. That's actually a question for the Planning Commission, ultimately the City Council, to determine. We had a long discussions, if the Planning Commission members, on what the definition of open space should be and what the determination of what open space should be, and we didn't want to put a number on it. So, for example, we didn't want to say the open space has to be a depth of X or a width of Y. It's basically on a case-by-case basis. When we review a cluster such as this, it's always a balancing act. On one hand, they could come in with a straight subdivision or site condominium and put lot line to lot line and put backyards to backyards here. What the applicant is doing in exchange for 4 extra units is putting 30% open space. The question is that the right layout for this particular site, and has the open space been adequately provided? We do note that the quality of the trees are not super high on this site. However, those trees that are of some quality are mostly located in the interior site, which will be removed as a result of the development. They are providing the benefit by providing a significant or much larger buffer to adjacent properties that they wouldn't be able to do without a cluster. But the question is that open space really going to be usable, functional, and really provide a benefit to the residents?
Thank you.
I had a question, Mr. Carlo. I think you mentioned the garage being the dominant feature of the front elevation, and that being an issue with the ordinance. And was that also communicated to the applicant?
Yes. It's noted on, it's noted on page 8 of my report, and one of the standards for cluster, the last provision is the garage shall not be the dominant feature of a residential building. It's in the actual ordinance itself. And we do note that looking at the proposed elevations as well as floor plans, it appears that the garage is the dominant feature. And that's coupled with the fact that they don't meet the garage setback, which is 25 feet, and they're only proposing 20 feet.
And that was my second question. So the setback, I think you mentioned, was so that there could be a car parked in the garage and not block the sidewalk. Is that right? So at 20 feet, there's that issue as well, I assume.
Yes, I mean, most cars are not 20 feet in length, but to have a 20-foot wide or 20-foot long driveway, you'd basically have to pull the car as close to the garage door as
Right.
possible so it doesn't overhang into the sidewalk.
Understood. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Carlisle? Would the petitioner like to speak? All right.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you so much for allowing us to present before you this evening. I am here on behalf of the developer in this situation. My name is Michelle Spencer. I'm with Powell Engineering, and I prepared the engineering plans. Obviously, as you can see from our plan, there is a picture of it over there, a pictorial picture of it. This is a smaller residential R1B site, and there is not a whole lot of different variations that we can do. We did want to maintain the existing home, which we did our very best to maintain the required setbacks for that existing home. Thank you very much, Brent. I also want to point out to you that one of the biggest reasons to go with an open space is, as with all of the development around the outside, the residential development around the outside, the house is back to back, and there's only 45 feet from the rear setback. In fact, in a lot of cases, they're even smaller than that because they were developed a long time ago. In this development, we are providing 60 to 75 feet from the rear of from the exterior property line to the back of the building envelope. So they can only be 60 to 75 feet from the exterior property lines, which is a very large benefit to the surrounding area. It allows us to leave vegetation around the property and provide screening from neighbors so that one house is not looking directly into the neighbor's rear house of the other neighbor. I also wanted to point out, Lot 14, it is the one deviation that we have requested for the site boundary, and that property does back up to the neighboring property's detention pond, not any residential development or home. I also wanted to point out the bioswales. I believe that they are a very nice provision to provide wetland plants that provide recharging of the groundwater into the groundwater clean, and it perks into the ground more through those bioswales or bioretention areas. It also allows evapotranspiration so that there's not just one large, huge pond for a breeding ground for mosquitoes. I think that is a very natural way. We also meandered them and moved them around some trees so that we could provide the saving of 3 landmark trees, or 2 landmark trees and 13 woodland trees that are in good condition that we were able to save by going with the open space development. I guess My clients are more than happy to also work with the architectural of the home to try to make sure that the garage door facing the road is an architectural feature, put nicer garage doors on that can be written within the open space and the development agreement with the city, and making sure that they are a beautiful feature of the house, not just your standard garage door, and actually have some windows and nice handles and everything on them to be more of an architectural feature than just your standard garage door. I guess I'm open to any comments that you have. We are more than happy to listen to your criticisms, work with you on anything that we can do to better the site as it's currently provided to you.
Thank you. I'll open it up for questions from the Planning Commission to the petitioner. Mr. Krent?
Yeah, I agree with your thought about that property 14 backing up to the retention pond. That doesn't bother me. Again, you're not affecting the neighboring properties or homeowners doing that. The couple things though, the garage, the prominence of the garage itself and the 20-foot length of the driveway that is a sticking point with me. I did a little bit of research. Basic BMW 750 Li is 17.5 feet. So most people don't pull up right up to the wood of their garage door. They usually give about 2 or 3 feet back. So you're at 20 foot right there. That gives, if that person did pull up maybe 2.5 feet, they're into the sidewalk. F-150 trucks, Ford trucks, are a very common vehicle. They are also around 17, the standard little one is 17.5 feet. The extended one is 20.9 feet. So you're already into the sidewalk for somebody that has one of those pickups. So that'd be a real sticking point. 25 feet, to me, is a minimum.
I would like to pull the developer up here to make comment to that. Jeremy?
Hello, my name is Jeremy Davis. I'm the project manager for the project. Just to your point to the garage door, we are willing to work with you on that as far as being able to adjust our architecture to bring that to the 25 feet recommendation that you guys need to continue the project. I just wanted to make a correction on the Colonial. He's stated that it was a 4,000 square foot Colonial. We have 2 options with the Colonial. The one is 3,000 square feet and the other is 3,200 square feet. They're not quite the 4,000. So as far as the garage, we're willing to work with whatever we have to do to make the 5 foot work, go to the architect and have them shrink the inside of it below our 2,000 square feet and beyond.
Any other questions? Mr. Edmonds?
Can you point out specifically where each of the bioswales, how many are there and where are they?
Absolutely. Brent, if you could go back to, I'm very sorry, if you could go back to one of our, I can show them on this, but then the rest of the crowd can't see it. Kind of hard to see. Maybe go on. There you go.
This one?
Can you go to the second one? Excellent.
This one?
Yeah, that one. It's kind of harder to see behind you. However, you can see I have labeled it bioretention. They are very small, elongated, just swales that have special wetland vegetation within them and special types of grasses and stuff that really thrive in moist conditions. They also use a lot of that moisture in order to survive. They also allow good roots into the ground that allow the water to work its way down into the soil more properly. So the bioretention, they were tweaked in order to save many of the woodland trees and the woodland trees and the landmark trees. So there is one to the north, on the east side. If you can, I've labeled them bioretention. They're small pipes, just restrictions that are going from one to the next, so that if for any reason they filled too high, they would go through the restricted pipe to the next bioretention area and eventually end up into the detention pond. But they are located along the entire top of properties 14, actually there's not one on 14, but there is one on 13 through, I believe that's 8, and then they're all the way along the rear or the north side, as well as on the bottom as well, behind each of the properties, kind of within a little bit of the property and a little bit outside of the property.
Thank you.
Mr. Sanzi.
I'm just curious, is that in lieu of a backyard drain for the sump pump?
It works in place of the actual storm sewer that would be going in there on a standard development. Yes.
Thank you.
Just a follow-up. So the sump pumps inside the houses in the basements would go into that
Those would actually be going into the street.
street side?
Yes, correct.
And this is a private road?
This is proposed as a public city road.
This is a private road.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize.
Thank you.
So it's narrower?
Yes, it's only 40 feet in width, which was a discussion that we had as part of the cluster ordinance, was to allow a private road at 40 feet.
Thank you for clarifying.
Mr. Tagle?
The common area that I raised a question about earlier around the back perimeter, you said one of the benefits, or the benefit, is that the distance between the building and the property line or the next neighbor is increased. How is that a benefit to the community or this community in and of itself? You know, and I don't want to be overcritical, but your bioretention separates any common area that one could go out on. I mean, you have to either walk around the bioretention swale, but it's kind of a buffer that keeps your yard, you know, closer to the house. Visually, I understand that the distance from the house to the property line or to another building is increased, but I don't see how that benefits the community as a whole, because it would appear that if I wanted to enjoy this common space, it would almost appear like I'm in my neighbor's backyard.
Well, I do think that the bioretention or the bioswale does actually give that separation so that the homeowners aren't going to encroach on that space as their own personal yard. So I do think that the bioretention area does benefit in that area. There is also areas where there is pathways between each section of bioretention, which is a pathway into that area. And I believe the owners would be more than happy to do some sort of a nature trail meandering through the trees back there as well.
I guess that's a question. How, as a member of this community, would I use this common area?
I think that we could add a nice wood chip walk area to allow people to meander through there and enjoy the natural trees that are in that area.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments, but to me it seems disjointed from a common area, because basically it's a ring around the backyards of the homes. And I just don't see a place to create community there. I mean, again, I get it, it could be a nature trail, but I don't see it as a place where could kids play? Could there be playground activities? Or could it be a place where you sit down and talk to your neighbors? I just don't see this design accomplishing that.
I do believe that the developer is willing to remove Lot 14 and use that for a playground park area for the actual neighborhood. And that would be near the detention pond, which would be a nice feature as well. They could potentially put a fountain in that and make it a nice scenic little park space.
Will that pond always be wet?
I believe that that is an option. We haven't, obviously, that is part of the construction plans. If you would like it to be wet, we can actually absolutely dig it out and maintain 2 feet, 3 feet of clearance in the bottom and put a small fountain in that, absolutely.
Well, again, it's not so much what I want, but it's what what you would come to us as a developer or as a designer and say, these are the amenities that we would like to present to you for this development.
The current design only shows the volume necessary for the additional storm above and beyond the bioretention areas. However, there is plenty of space to be able to go down deeper in order to make it a water feature and actually make it look nice. So if that is what the Planning Commission would like to see, we can absolutely provide that.
What would you like to see?
I think I would like to see a pretty fountain there.
Any other, Mr. Sabatino?
Not to throw water on the pretty fountain idea, but just keep in mind that typically residential detention basins are turned over to the city of Troy for maintenance. They require a 1-on-6 slope, and they're required to be detention and not retain water. If we dig this deeper and it retains water and it holds water, it's going to have to be fenced for safety purposes. So that's a discussion. I think that's a more detailed discussion. I think at this point, it's probably preferable to stick to the detention basin. However, if they want to come back with retention, I think we have to have a discussion internally to make sure that who's going to maintain it, et cetera.
Thank you. Any other comments for the applicant? No. Okay. Before I open the public hearing, two things. One, we had a sign-in log that was on the table here. Would you mind bringing that back up so people can sign in that haven't signed in before they speak? And then secondly, just a few comments. A public hearing is an opportunity for the residents to share their comments on a specific project with the Planning Commission. Everyone in attendance tonight who wishes to speak will be given that opportunity. We appreciate everyone who's come out tonight to share their thoughts with the Planning Commission, and we view your thoughts as important. Before I open the public hearing, I just want to articulate a few ground rules. First, please begin your comments by stating your name and address for the public record. Please address all your comments to the Planning Commission. Please be respectful of the Planning Commission, the staff and consultant, the applicants, and those in the audience. This is an opportunity for the residents to provide comments, but it's not a discussion or debate. This is a formal public meeting, and it must be handled with decorum and professionalism, and we ask those in attendance to refrain from talking, clapping, cheering during the meeting. Finally, to make for an efficient and effective meeting, each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes, and their comments should relate to the specific application under discussion. So with that, I'd like to open up the meeting for public comments. Yes. Yes, sir.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, will we be limiting comments to 3 minutes?
Yes, I said that, didn't I?
Oh, I wasn't sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, we will. Yes.
You keeping?
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Rob Policia. I live at 5141 Folkestone Drive, which is the property that will be butting up to this proposed site at the north end. Okay. I have 3 points of concern. The first is the reduced property lot sizes, minimal spacing between the homes. Just to give you a little bit of background for myself, I grew up in Sterling Heights, where 33 years ago, the typical lot was 60 by 120. If you had your windows down, you could hear your neighbors' conversations. We decided to move to Troy in large part because we like the large lots in Sylvan Glen. They're a minimum of 100 foot wide. And my lot, as it backs up to this section here, is 120 feet wide. The amount of distance between our homes in Sylvan Glen is about 50 feet. So there's a lot of area between the existing homes. When you look at that picture up there, if you look at the very bottom, you'll see that there are 6 lots that are adjacent to the proposed site. Each has a minimum of 100 foot wide lot. So when you compare that to this proposed site, you've got 7 houses there in the same space, plus the width of that street, the Davis Court Street there. And obviously, in order to fit that all in, you've got to reduce the lot sizes to about 70 feet, as I kind of estimated on this drawing that I got from the city here. When you combine that with the size of the houses that are on here, and I was a little perplexed by the gentleman's statement that says it's not a 4,000 square foot house, because the information does specify that the biggest house is a 4,000 square foot house. Anyway, when you combine that size house on a 70-foot lot, obviously the houses are going to be a lot closer together to one another. I estimated that they're about 18 feet apart, as opposed to the 50 feet that our houses are apart from one another in Sylvan Glen. So when you look at the appearance of that, it appears to me to be an overcrowded situation compared to the equivalent houses that are surrounding that site. The second point of concern is the green space and the wildlife. There's currently a lot of deer in this area. They're in the area that would be where the woods are, which is that top row of houses there. And there's been a lot of discussion about green space and in the last couple of years and trying to preserve it. Naturally, with green space, you have wildlife.
Your time is almost
All right.
Your time is actually up. So just if you want to make a closing comment, you can.
All right, I am opposed to the cluster option. It requires that you kind of jam a lot more houses in there than what's in the equivalent spaces in Sylvan Glen already. And I'm concerned about what happens to the wildlife, and I am also concerned about the water drainage, because that pond, one of the questions was who maintains the pond. It sounds like the city or the taxpayers maintain the pond.
Thank you for your
And it's all of those are concerns for me.
Does anyone else want to speak? The public. Yes.
My name is Ray Taylor. I live at 5670 Folkestone. I'd like to read a section from the master plan, page 70. Neighborhoods are vital components of the city. Historically, neighborhoods provide societal, educational, recreational, and economic needs within a half-mile walking distance. The Vision 2020 strategy establishes the idea of hosting villages within the city. Residents want to enjoy a personal sense of place, which is best found at the neighborhood scale. For Troy, the ingredients are a place for classic walkable neighborhoods. Major thoroughfares and elementary and middle schools are currently located within many of the neighborhoods. In my opinion, this proposed complex does not meet the stated requirements of the master plan and the Vision 2020 strategy. In fact, this complex will increase parking demands, traffic, pollution, demands for resources, and not augment the current neighborhood in any reasonable way.
Ray, may I ask you
Yes.
what you used as the basis for making that assertion?
I use my opinion.
Your opinion is the basis for that
Up there,
assertion?
that's why I started the statement within my,
Okay.
can the clock stop? It did, thank you. I started the statement within my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Please continue.
Excellent. In the Vision 2020 strategy, the city set an optimal walking distance of 1/2 mile in the master plan. Within the half-mile radius of this proposed complex, there are, among other things, no schools, only one full-service restaurant, only one deli, only one grocery store, 3 banks, 1 hardware store, and 1 drugstore. There's no access for children to get through the complex and into the neighborhood without using the sidewalks associated with the main street. This increases the distance children and families would have to walk to get to any close amenities, including Sylvan Glen Park, which places it outside of that half-mile radius. This proposed complex is not a village within the city. Our neighborhood of single-family homes are unique to their ownership, landscape, and design. Together, we are a village, and I'm asking the Planning Commission to protect us from the continued proposal of development that impacts our neighborhoods, impacts our neighbors, and does not meet the goal of the Vision 2020 strategy by denying our request to rezone this property. Thank you.
For your comments. Would anyone else like to speak? And if there are others that would like to speak, you can line up behind the current speaker just to move the process forward more quickly. Please state your name.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Cantillon, and thank you for planning this city so beautifully. This is my third home in Troy. My first home was at 1642 Castleton. My second home was at 1825 Lakewood. And when it came time to raise my family and have them attend school, I chose Sylvan Glen. I chose Sylvan Glen because my children could walk to both the elementary school and the middle school. Plus, they could go to the absolutely excellent Troy High School. And I think, until recently, I have been a very happy citizen of Troy and taxpayer. This particular development, of course, is too close for comfort. It doesn't fit in. All the other properties along Long Lake Road are all single-family units, such as the current Roberts home. Recently, as you probably know, there has been a humongous, beautiful, luxury-sized home facing Long Lake. All the residential properties on both sides of Long Lake are single-family homes. Okay, we have the drugstore, we have the hardware store. Those are commercial, obviously. But for where people live, they're all single-family homes. And I think the density of this particular development doesn't fit in. It's like you have Long Lake Road, both sides, and then you pick this particular spot out of everything that doesn't fit like this. We are a community of single-family homes, and now you want to put this in here. And not only do you want to put this here, you want to put it here in a very questionable manner. I beg you, please, don't do this. Don't do this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask Ms. Cantal on her address, please?
5231 Hertford Drive.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eileen Gallahue. I live at 5070 Somerton Drive, which is within the square mile that this proposed development is occurring. My simple Well, I have two items that I'm very concerned with on the density of the home. I have 3 children in the Troy School, and we love it here. We are very concerned that the developments are not keeping up with the crowded situations in the school. It is at maximum density, it seems like at Martell. I'm not exactly of the sure numbers at Smith, but my children will be attending there. And as, of course, the high school is very crowded, so I would like to see how these numbers stack up in comparison with what the community is growing at large. Now, the other biggest concern is my background is chemical engineering, which deals with water transfer, in many cases chemical transfer. I look at the amount of water and the water transfer on the proposed background here. I'm very concerned. I don't know all the data behind the plant basis for eliminating a detention pond. I'd like to see more data and information on the rate of consumption of water of these plants. I would like to see also a study that says when we have a 1-inch rainfall, which recently we've had several of those, and it seems like every other year we're having more than a 1-inch rainfall in a 24-hour period. So if we look at that data, the consumption of water for these plants, will that keep up with the water system? I want to make sure nobody has a leaky basement here. And besides those plants being necessary to absorb the water from all of the concrete that is now going to be covering this area, we also have basements that will be taking up the space of where the groundwater will be traditionally stored. So you now have a depletion of an area where some of the groundwater will be staying and a depletion of the system to remove the water. And at this point, I'm not an engineer on these buildings, but I am very concerned with the rate of return on the water system. So if you have, I would disagree with the density here and the water system very much. I wish them luck on their development, but I think it is the wrong type or size for this area.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm Carol Mazurek. I live at 5172 Hertford. We've lived in Troy for 25 years, and our property directly backs up to the acreage we are talking about tonight. I am not at all happy about seeing the woods behind us cut down. We'll miss seeing the deer walk through our yard and knowing the fox den behind us was destroyed. However, when we spoke with the previous property owner many years ago, we knew it was his intention to one day sell his property and have it developed. As I believe this is the first time the current owner has developed a site this large, I am very concerned about the plans that are proposed. The plan before us would allow 13 structures between 2 to, I believe now 3,200 square feet to be built on only 70-foot wide lots. At 3,200 feet, these homes are much larger than many of the current homes around the perimeter of the property. To prevent flooding, they have proposed bioswales or I think ditches to collect the rainwater to drain to a newly developed detention pond. As the property is being prepared for the new homes, what happens to the water following heavy rains before this system is in place, and will it be large enough to work sufficiently? Also, we'd like to know who is responsible for the upkeep to ensure that it works properly, who cuts the grasses, who maintains the area. Will the ditches be will they be breeding grounds for mosquitoes now? What happens to the plant foliage as it dies off? Does it clog drains? We need to increase the green space designated on this plan and preserve as many mature trees and habitats for the wildlife while leaving the natural aspects of the property intact. I hope the City Planning Department will listen carefully to our concerns tonight and look closely at the problems in this proposal before approving this development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Toby Goslin. It's a pleasure to come to meet you and see you tonight. I've never come to a planning commission before, so thank you for this opportunity. I live at 5190 Folkestone Drive. I don't back up to the property, but I am here to support my neighbors who do. I have one major concern. You're the professionals, you're the engineers, you're planning consultants, and I have confidence in you. You're looking at things that I have no clue about. However, I come from an experience where baby boomers are leaving their homes going into a condo, and our condo was built and developed by Ivanhoe Huntley, 100-year plus experience. They went flat dead. Our complex was not finished. It was never turned into the homeowners association. Mortgage companies wouldn't lend on it. It was dead in the water. And if I continue to look at this Amber Town Center, another day, another hour, and the blight that it's created, you're all smiling. We all know we're wondering what is going on there. This appears to be a freshman builder developer. I'm not sure what I'm hearing, but it's very disconnected. I'm very concerned about it. I'm assuming you are going to pay attention to all the details. We don't need blight. We don't need errors. We don't need contractors that walk out because they're not getting paid. Yes, we love our deer. Yes, I love the nature. I don't want to lose that, but I'm concerned about my condo experience and what I know for sure happened. I hope that doesn't happen here in Troy. So I trust that you have your eyes on it, you're dotting your I's, you're crossing your T's, and you'll look very closely at the concerns. I'm not an engineer, I'm not a developer, but I see a lot of red flags. So please pay attention on behalf of those of us who don't have the experience. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Heather Sibley. I live at 5160 Hertford Drive, and my property is actually next to the current retention pond that is fenced in and maintained by the city. Therefore, the lot number 14 would be directly diagonal from the back of my lot, and I have major concerns about their water distribution plan. There is right now a forest behind my backyard. That canopy of trees, whether they're of good quality or not, prevents a lot of waterfall from making it to the ground. The root system that's in place now absorbs a lot of the water, and the groundwater has a place to go. The retention pond that is currently next to my house, I have only been in Troy for 1 year. Our family is one of the few fortunate families to be active duty service members located to the Troy area. Since I have been here in a year, that retention pond has filled 3 times. Therefore, you're planning on literally putting ditches just behind my backyard, and the anticipation of those bioswales is that one will feed the next, will feed the next, and they run directly into Lot 14, and if you look at where the center of those bioswales are, they run directly into the back wall of where that home will be. So that basement is either going to now collect the water because it's in the space that the groundwater used to be collected, or it's going to have to go somewhere else. There's maybe a detention pond there. Maybe now they're saying they'll put a park there. There's also currently not enough space behind that house for current ordinances, and they also have issues with their driveway spaces. So it sounds like there are a lot of issues with the planning in the first place, and it's not being looked at as the whole, how is this going to impact this community during the building process and into the future. Beyond the water retention, there's also an impact on the life that lives back there. There are a family of deer that live there. There are skunks. We have bats that help control the insect population. If these trees are gone and this infrastructure is gone for them, where do they go and what helps control those populations? The other concern I have is for roads and the schools. My children currently attend Martell, and my son will be going to Troy High School next year. Both Martell and Smith Middle School have huge, huge traffic issues off of Livernois and coming off of Square Lake into Smith Middle School for those parents who are coming in driving. If the students that are coming from this community, on top of the many other new communities that the planning department has approved of, are they going to be bused? Are they going to be driven? Because the walkability on the main road for these students is pretty far. So I think looking at the big picture and the right hand talking to the left hand to see what the overall impact on the entire community at large would be hugely beneficial, not only to the community that exists, but the one that could be coming in. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Sarah Mazurik. I live at 5172 Hertford, and my lot backs directly up to the field or proposed property. The field behind my house has played a major role in many childhood memories that I hold so dear to my heart. The main reason why my parents moved to Troy in the first place was because of the school system being so good. So I can't help but think that in this case, many of the people who are going to be moving into these condos, if built, will have children who are going to be going to the schools. I find that it's most important to preserve as much green space or as much open space as possible, giving, even just to give the kids more of a yard to play in, because so many times you see so many homes built right on top of each other that the kids are forced to have like a digital childhood growing up rather than a real childhood because they don't have a place to play. Also, this serves as a home to millions of animals that have lived here through generations and generations since the wildlife was here. There's also a vast amount of wildlife. Like today, we've had like at least 5 baby bunnies living in our yard, and we see deer on a weekly basis coming to this spot as a safe place because they're already being pushed out of so many other wooded areas in Troy that are being developed, like my friend over here. If these condos are built, now that the animals don't have places to go, there's already a lot of accidents caused by deer collisions. There's already had to be one that had to be put down in the back there because it had gotten hit, so there will be many more accidents because of that. The 3 families of skunks that live behind our house will probably take residence in these new homes, and now that the bats don't have anywhere to nest, there's going to be a lot more mosquitoes, especially with these retention ponds and other waterways. My main concern is it's really about preserving all the natural life that has already been here for so long. And I do know that like the developers, you do have rights to do what you wish with this land, but please just take into consideration just to try to make smaller homes with bigger yards to preserve as much green as possible, because that's all that I've ever known when I look into my yard ever since I was born. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kathy Mativier-Ritza. I live on 800 Creston, and I live down the street from the development, the proposed development. I just wanted to say, I grew up in Westland, and I still have property there. It's my rental property now because I'm married and I live in Troy. And I hate to see what is happening. It seems like what's happening is that everybody's just looking for a way to make more money and crowding people in together. And I'm afraid what will happen with Troy is what's happened with Westland is there's way too many rental properties and the houses are too close together, and I just really hate to see all the green space disappearing. I love what everybody has said so far, and they've been more articulate than I could be, but it really bothers me to drive around and see everything being developed, and I feel very bad about that. And I think that you're the stewards of our community, the Planning Commission, so it's your responsibility to make sure that we have a nice community to live in, not just that we make a lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mylan Chonich. I live at 5783 Glasgow Drive in Troy. My property does not back up to this proposed site. I live closer to Sylvan Glen Golf Course, but I'm here to ask you to reject this particular plan because it disrespects the character of our neighborhood. I'd like you to consider the well-thought-out comments that were made by the previous speakers, and the character of the neighborhood is one in which the people here have tried to maintain. And this particular site, I think, would degrade from the overall, not only character, but the overall lifestyle of Sylvan Glen residents. So on behalf of people who don't back up to the property, there are many, we ask you to reject this plan. Thank you.
Sir, did you sign in?
I did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Charles Hornick. I live at 123 Nottingham Court. It's also in Sylvan Glen. I've been a resident of Sylvan Glen for 20 years. And as with many of the speakers who spoke before me, one of the biggest things that I fell in love with in that subdivision was the size of the lots, the overall homes, the way it was laid out. And I could talk about many things, but the biggest thing I guess I noticed with this development is that looking at it, I could truly understand why it's referred to as a clustered development. I mean, it just, the amount of houses or condos that are put into this relatively small area, to me, it violates the historical standard of the Sylvan Glen subdivision. If any of you had driven through the Sylvan Glen subdivision and seen the houses in there, the lots, you'd understand what I'm saying. So for me, my objection to this particular development is that it just doesn't meet the standard of what's been the Sylvan Glen subdivision for many, many years. Trying to put this many units into this space is just not right. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Helen Chonich, and I live at 5783 Glasgow. My husband was Mylan. He was just up here. We built our home 40 years ago in Sylvan Glen 3. And the only reason we built was because of the size of the lots. I've been staring at this picture, looking at the footprints of the concrete that is being put in. There's almost no green space with these condos. There's just these little slivers. There's a huge road that's been put into the middle of it. And I'm thinking, why can't they, if they're going to do anything, single family and not this condo stuff, and just put the size of the homes like we're all used to, which we have the 100 by 150 foot lots. We got 100 by 150 where we are. And these are just, it's shocking to look at how much concrete between the basements, the street, the driveways, the sidewalks. There's nothing left in there for anything to live, much less, these people who are losing the wildlife in the backyard and all that. This is just basically, as far as I'm concerned, is shameful that they would even consider putting something like that in. Down the street, like another lady mentioned, they've put in nice homes, they've broken up the lots, but they haven't tried to put in this much square footage, So that's it for me. I'm just shocked to see how much concrete is going into such a small space. And that's my opinion.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you, and I have signed in.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I say something?
Sure.
One of the most confusing terms in development in Michigan is the word condominium. A condominium is a form of ownership. It's not a unit type. So most single-family detached developments in the city, which this is, are approved either as a subdivision, which Sylvan Glen was, or a site condominium. I've been an employee for the city of Troy for 15 years, and with the exception of 2 developments, every single-family detached residential development has been a site condominium. Again, it's a form of ownership, and it's a process of review and approval. This is a site condominium, but the unit types are single-family detached homes. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you for the clarification. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Paul Ritza. I live at 800 Creston. It's in the Crystal Springs subdivision. It was the original sub for that square mile. I'm a lifelong resident of Troy. My father built my home. I was one of the first classes at Leonard School when they built it. I saw Martell go up. I saw Smith go up. My kids went to Martell. I live on a 1-acre lot. And when I tell my friends, or when I tell anybody that I meet that I have an acre lot in Troy, they are astounded. I think our goal as the Planning Commission is not to be like Royal Oak, to have a lot, to have a house on the size of your lot, but to be like Bloomfield Hills. They have nice houses on large lots. If I had a 5,000 or a 4,000 square foot house that I was building, I would not put it on a 1/4 acre like they've done on the corner of 18 and Somerton. There was 1 lot there. They divided it into 2, put 2 huge colonials there. They did the same thing at Somerton and Trinway. It was 1 lot. There's 2 new huge colonials there now. And I'd like to address the open space. In my time in Troy, on Somerton, there was a wetland. They cleared it and put in houses on the west side of the street. Behind my house, there was woods. There was a wetland. They cleared it. I'm expecting houses to go up there at some point in time. But we should strive to maintain what open space we have for our future generations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good evening. We're Joseph and Mary Johns, and we live at 270 Harwich. And I believe we're in lot number 8. We back up to the property there. And when we first bought our home in Troy over 20-some years ago, I had an opportunity to kind of visit the neighborhood for a little bit, and I had a brother that lived down the street, so I got to learn the neighborhood and fell in love with it, and that's why we bought there. It is quiet, the lot size, we loved it. We ourselves own a 3/4 acre lot. When we bought, we were told that it was a 7-acre lot, it was landlocked, but that they could possibly fit 5 to 6 single-family homes. And that did not mean condo to us. And so we're just astounded that it's like...
No breathing room.
Yeah, it's very, very cramped. And so we are opposed, of course, to this the cluster development anyway. And I'm wondering, we already have a retention pond, so now we're going to have 2 retention ponds. Okay. Anyway, the whole development does not fit in with the lots or the neighborhood or what we expected when we bought it, and we've been dutiful taxpayers all these years.
And I tend to agree with the other people about the drainage.
Yeah.
Our basement, our sump pump does run when it gets wet, and especially in the spring. And this isn't going to take care of any more of the water. It's probably going to make it worse.
That's what we're thinking. We've replaced 2 or 3 already?
Sump pumps,
yeah. Anyway, we'd like to say ditto to what everybody else previously said, and also to just keep in mind that less is more. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak?
I am Ramesh Nittur, and my site home number is 5069. It's in the adjacent, on the eastern side of the place, adjacent to that.
Your address?
5069 Falmouth Drive. So this is eastern side of this place here. So you already heard everybody, and so I'd just like to summarize. See, there are various kinds of change processes required for a planning. I have some background in planning also. I used to be doing strategic planning in industries and different kind of stuff. So there are certain situations where where disruptive planning makes sense. But here, as you have seen, most of the people and many more people are really upset with it. I don't know whether you get the sense of intensity of how people feel about it. But this seems to be a very disruptive change. It's going to make a sort of a downtown or a suburb. That kind of sense we get. It just doesn't vibe with the cultural ethos or whatever we have in that place, the ambience of the place. Somehow it doesn't blend with that, you know. So I think this factor, the socio-psychological factor, which is a critical requirement in developing communities, the kind of families we have, how the children will grow up there, this has to be considered. And please do take this into consideration. I understand that it's a matter of money also, so there has to be a fair trade-off between the two. The addition has to be not one-sided, it has to be pragmatic. I understand that. But this factor which has sort of surfaced in a lot of feeling, especially the people who have lived here for a lifetime and the kids who grew up here, I think that sensitivity has to be sort of accommodated in some way. Huh? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mary Palisha. I live at 5141 Folkestone Drive. I'd like to talk on a more personal note. My house backs up, I believe, 8? 7? And my husband and I, my family, knew George Roberts as a personal friend. And I see the street here named Roberts Road, perhaps to honor him. If you want to honor George Roberts, keep that grand house and all the green. He was a farmer at heart. There were several times he grew corn and vegetables. So please keep it green. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. And bring it back to the Planning Commission table for any Planning Commission comments or questions.
Mr. Chairman, I've listened, I have reviewed the plans, looked at the ordinance, and I have 4 major concerns. Probably the biggest is the open space requirement. I don't believe this plan even comes close to complying with the thought and the planning for the open space in a cluster. The open space in a cluster is given to induce the developer to devote more land to an open space for the community itself. In return, they can build a few more homes. The homes I see here have some problems. One, the 20-foot suggestion for the drive instead of the 25-foot requirement is not negotiable as far as I'm concerned. Secondly, the transparency requirement and the visualness of the homes in this community, specifically, this commission has rejected a prominent feature such as the garage that overpowers every home. Third, the bioswales. In my opinion, that is not an adequate trade-off for an additional lot, number 14. So, I guess when it's all said, unless those can be corrected somehow to meet the ordinance, I cannot in good conscience vote for approval of this plan.
I share those same concerns, Mr. Hudson. Ms. Cruz.
I'm going to echo many of Mr. Hudson's concerns. We were all involved in drafting this ordinance, and I believe that part of the spirit of drafting this ordinance was to encourage the preservation of wetlands and open space and community, in addition to encouraging the idea that developers would come in with housing that would meet some of the other needs of this community, like younger families, single people, and empty nesters. When you come at me with a plan that doesn't really utilize our open space requirements and has floor plans of homes that are 2,000 to 3,200 square feet in size, and then completely violates the ordinance with respect to the snub-nosed garage look. These are items that we were trying to get away from with this ordinance. It doesn't embrace the spirit of the ordinance. It may at some level be allowed. I mean, we talked about how we could have a developer come in with a larger floor plan, but that wasn't really the intent behind it as we were drafting. We were really trying to encourage open space, smaller homes, architectural features and designs, a sense of community, and I just don't think that this development meets what our intentions were in the drafting process.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Cooper.
So, Brent, if you could go to page 15 in the bottom, because the first thing I saw when I read this was that picture of the trees. And I saw all these green dots, and I was so excited. If you go up further.
The report?
Of the report, yeah. Page 15, yeah, that one. I saw so many green dots, and then I realized that the green dots were the ones being removed. And what brought me to concern was, yes, they meet the requirements of the ordinance for the tree protection and the cluster, but somehow the underlying intent of our, like they said, the total tree mitigation is 0, but we're removing so many important trees in that space. So somehow we missed the boat. Maybe we need, as a commission, need to go back and look at that ordinance. But I echo the opinions of my fellow commissioners who are concerned. I do like the idea of a cluster. I think it's an important, cluster development is an important way to progress the city's development. We have a good cluster development that we've approved that has gone through here, and everyone was happy with it. I think we could see others. I don't think that this is one of them, unfortunately.
Any other comments? Mr. Crane? Oh, Ms. Senzi.
Well, I agree. I can't disagree with any of my colleagues on the Planning Commission. I think the developer needs to go back, do his homework, readjust the setbacks for the garages, eliminate lot 14, look at trying to offset the garage, the frontage of the garages, the architectural facade. I do like the bioswales, but to me, I can't justify in my mind adding an additional lot because of the bioswale. So I think, Greg, at some point, I think we need to postpone this project, let the developer have another chance to redesign it and come back to us with another proposal.
Mr. Edmonds.
Well, I agree with all the other planning commissioners who have spoken regarding this item. When we, as Mrs. Krupa so aptly described, formed the cluster option, this was not our intent. I think the developer has really pushed the envelope, and I would not be able to vote in favor of this project as it now stands. After looking at all the green dots or trees that they are going to be cutting down, I would ask the developer to consider making that central area there the private park space and let the road go around it. So that area could be enjoyed by all the residents there. I think it's, that's my opinion. Thank you.
Mr. Hudson.
Sort of an afterthought, it occurred to me that in the discussions, there were several neighbors or more who mentioned the fact that this development would not permit, if there are school-aged children in the homes, access to the neighboring areas, because it is literally a landlocked parcel with homes on every part of the rectangle here. And unless some neighbor would want to sell his home and convert it to a street, I doubt that you're going to have much of an ability to use that as an argument against the plot. It goes out to Long Lake, and as far as the school population, we've got several members of the commission whose wives are on the school board or have been on the school board. They wrestle with this too, but they're not going to upset a project for a development because of the number of kids. They're balancing that every year. There's always going to be room in the Troy schools, so I wouldn't be too concerned about that.
One quick comment. I wanted to add on to what Mr. Tagle recommended about the, in lieu of Lot 14 being developed, having some community area there. And I know the developer proposed that may be an option, but if you could have that as a park setting, something to allow the residents to congregate in that area, to have more availability to the open space. I think that would be very, very beneficial.
Are we ready for no, Mr. Tagle?
Yeah, just one last thought, and I'm in agreement with everything that my fellow commissioners have said. What keeps coming to my mind is creativity in the planning process. This is a pretty straightforward response to the size and shape of the site that you've got. But I think there's some opportunity here to maybe think out of the box a little bit. Some things have been mentioned that may guide you in your thinking. But I think, instead of having a double-loaded street down the middle of this site, there could be some opportunity to do something a little bit different with the massing of these areas, whether it's the community area or the open area, and how you handle the bioswales and really, so I just would strongly recommend to, think a little bit about something differently than maybe the approach that you've presented with us tonight as far as a planning. How do you take this parcel of property and plan it, but make sure that there are amenities that may be beneficial or will be beneficial to the community, but also something that maybe we don't see every day when we drive down a subdivision, and come up with something more creative.
Mr. Savino.
I just want to take this opportunity to take a minute and just explain kind of where we are, what a cluster is, and what we're talking about this evening. This is the third development that the Planning Commission has considered under the recently revised cluster option. And what we do when we get this is an optional type of development. The applicant has to go before Planning Commission for a public hearing. Neighbors are informed of the public hearing, can speak. Planning Commission makes a recommendation, then it goes to City Council for a public hearing for ultimate approval. The reason that we have these public hearings is they can potentially get an increase in density, like we talked about. This is 14 units. To qualify for the 14 units, the first step that the applicant does is prepare what's called a parallel plan. This is the parallel plan. This is the plan that the applicant can submit and get approved by right. What that means is it does not go to City Council. There is no public hearing. This is kind of the bare bones standard type of layout that the applicant has the right to develop on the property. Just like all the homes, all the neighbors I heard speak this evening, same type of development, same rights. So they're held to the same standard and have the same rights as everyone in this room in terms of this development. So if the applicant didn't come forward with a cluster seeking additional units and saving 30% open space, the applicant, if they so desire, can come forward with this. I just want to make sure that people are aware of that. The reason I say this is, first of all, I want everyone's expectations to be kind of on par. But I want to stress this is an option, and this is generally something that the Planning Commission supports. And the reason I say that is when done right, and you've heard that the Planning Commission has some concerns with this development, but when done right, it affords the opportunity to preserve open space, preserve trees, preserve wetlands. Again, I mentioned this is the third open space or cluster development that we've got. The challenge with this site is it's fairly small. The two previous applications we saw were dramatically larger, and there was more open space, and there was more flexibility in terms of affording the applicant flexibility and creativity. But I want people to understand that if this is denied, or if the applicant chooses not to go forward with a cluster, and this is the cluster that's proposed is going to have to be tweaked, we've heard that, this could be what we see. I just want people to be made aware of that. And I'll be quiet now, Mr. Chairman.
Mrs. Cruz.
Mr. Savadant, when you say that the applicant has the opportunity to submit this plan by right, are you saying then that the applicant, if that's what he would choose to submit, that plan would be considered variance-free?
Well, we haven't done a full-blown review on this, but what's misleading about this is an error, and we caught the error. One of these lots, if you can see the laser, one of these lots would actually be used for detention. So it's actually 10 units, not 11 units, because one of those goes away because of detention. But I believe that the applicant's engineer could put together an application that would be variance-free and would meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance for 10 lots.
And could you just explain to the audience what it means to the Planning Commission when we see an application that is variance-free?
When an application meets all the requirements of the zoning ordinance, lot size, road width, et cetera, the Planning Commission is obligated to approve. So what the applicant could do is theoretically could take this property, clear cut it, they're allowed to clear cut it, replace the required inches, excuse me, I'm trying to talk here, thank you, clear cut it, replace the required inches of trees around the perimeter or along the green belt, whatever they decide to do, so that the open space that's preserved around the perimeter in that application we saw is gone, goes away, and it becomes turf grass, becomes a lawn. So it's more of a standard type development that we see a lot of in Southeast Michigan. That's permitted by right.
Thank you.
Mr. Edmonds.
But they still have to meet the requirements of the Woodland Protection Ordinance.
As I indicated, Mr. Edmonds, they could theoretically clear cut and replace the required amount of inches of trees. They'd have to replace them on site, but they could remove trees. One of the intents of the cluster ordinance that we talked about is preservation of natural features such as trees.
Mr. Quinn, I agree with everyone on this board, and including our planning director. The applicant did offer to eliminate lot 14 and put in a park. There's so many, to address John Tagle's comments, it's just not creative. You know, a developer can come in, this is such a, I don't want to use it, don't take this as a derogatory term, but it's like rubber stamping. It's just like cookie cutter lots. There's nothing creative about this. I think Troy, people coming into Troy have great expectations of housing. I think like what Mr. Tagle said, you could do something really creative, outstandingly creative, and have those lots sold immediately, because nothing has been done like this in Troy because it's so incredibly gorgeous. This doesn't meet that standard, but I don't expect the developer to think like Disney World, but they could do something a lot more creative than what we see here. The other element is I can't vote for any kind of approval until I see a redesign of the elevations, especially if they want to go cluster. The prominence of a garage door has to be upheld. The ordinance has to be upheld to not have the garage door a prominent feature of the front elevation. So as it stands now, there's no way I can approve this.
Mr. Tagle.
I would like you to take these comments personally. I would like you to take these comments as a challenge, not as a no. I think there's opportunity here. I think the fellow commissioners have shared with you concerns, but I think there are opportunities that you could develop something that is approvable. Again, I'm going out on a limb here, but you know, a lot of these comments sound negative, and I don't know that they're necessarily intended to be that, other than these are the things that we look for. These are the things that we've talked about in developing this ordinance. So really, I would like you to take this as a challenge and see what you can do with it. As an engineer or as a developer, let's see what you can come back with and do.
Ms. Cooper.
Mr. Savinant, I'd like to thank you very much for that explanation. Is it possible also that with the applicant you could share the cluster development that we did approve? The one that had us all just wanting to own one of those houses?
Definitely.
Oh, I might still move in.
Mr.
I think I'm going to anticipate what you're going to ask. I'm ready to propose a resolution.
Terrific.
Resolved, the Planning Commission recommends to City Council that preliminary condominium approval pursuant to Article 8 and Section 10.04 of the zoning ordinance as requested for Davis Cluster Development Site condominium, 14 units/lots, north side of Long Lake, east of Livernois, Section 10, currently zoned R1B, one family residential, be postponed for the following reasons: to provide the applicant an opportunity to address the issues identified in the report and recommended by the Planning Commission.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Krent. Ready for the vote?
No. I'm going to have to stop letting Kathy go on vacation. My handwriting is just way too poor and way too slow. We have a motion by Mr. Hudson and a second by Mr. Krent, I believe.
Correct.
Mr. Faison.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Krent. Ms. Koopa.
Yes.
Mr. Sanzika.
Yes.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Ms. Cruz.
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds.
Yes.
This item is postponed.
So moved. Do we need a break, or should we just continue?
A break.
Can we explain to them that all their comments,
Clear the room.
that when they come back, all their comments are still on record?
I think it's too late, Mr.
We should do a better.
Excuse me, we're going to start the meeting again, so if you're...
Take the conversation outside.
Right. Thank you very much. We're at item number 9 on the agenda, special use requests and preliminary site plan review file number SU JPLN 2017-0003, proposed Bethesda Romanian Pentecostal Church Edition, north side of Long Lake, east of John R., south of Tucker, 2075 East Long Lake, Section 12, currently zoned R1C, one-family residential district. Mr. Carlisle.
Yes, thank you. I have a very brief report.
Close the doors. Do not close the doors. No, just ask them to move down the hall.
Thank you.
Is it a fire code?
This is the,
You have to have doors open for a meeting?
Absolutely.
Yes.
You can't close
Mr. Carlisle, I think you're ready.
I've never done that.
Yep.
Oh,
Proceed?
you need, Mr. Frank?
Get honest. I'll proceed, if that's okay.
Yes.
This item was last reviewed by the Planning Commission at their April 25th meeting. Since that time, the applicant has gone back and reviewed the comments and resubmitted their plans. At the April 25th meeting, there was both Planning Commission comments as well as significant public comments. These comments included concern about the height exceeding the zoning ordinance maximum, the compatibility with the building with consideration of the neighborhood, consideration of another location, an alternative location on the lot, removal of the berm, the concern of construction traffic to the site off of Tucker, and the sufficiency or the length of the building and massing in relation to Tucker. Lastly, providing architectural design solutions in regards to potential issues of noise. The item was continued to allow the applicant to address this items, and specifically the Planning Commission really focused on 4 really items. One is a reduction to the height of the building, consideration of the visual impact of the addition to those residents on Tucker, the sufficiency of screening and landscaping along Tucker, and they also, the Planning Commission had asked for a 3D model to view the addition in relationship to proportion to the neighborhood. Since that last review, the applicant appears to have reduced the height to 30 feet. We do note the elevations show a height of 30 feet. However, the cover page still notes a height of 33 feet. We assume that the height of the building is 30 feet, but that should be corrected on the cover sheet of the plans themselves. The second item that has changed since the applicant was last before us is the applicant is proposing to increase the landscape screening along the berm. We do note, and it appears that the berm will be removed as part of construction for this project. And we note that the applicant has noted on their plan set that it will take 12 to 15 years for that berm to reach, the landscape on the berm to reach maturity height. In addition, there seems to be one large outstanding item, and that is the length of the building in relationship, and the size of the building in relationship to the impacts on Tucker. We do note that the length of the building of 176 feet by 30 feet or so at the midpoint in height may create an imposing position on Tucker. Coupled that fact with the removal of the berm and the reformation of the berm and the landscaping taking many years to mature, there will be a significant visual impact for those residents on Tucker. In addition, the Planning Commission had asked for a 3D model of the plan to show that in relation to the context of the neighborhood, and the applicant has not prepared that at this time as requested. So with all that being said, we recommend that prior to Planning Commission approval for the special use as well as the site plan, the applicant confirm the height of the building, confirm if construction will require the removal of the berm, address those items as noted by the Planning Commission, and specifically the provision of the 3D model to view the proposed addition in relation to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's bring it back to the Planning Commission for any questions for Mr. Carlisle. Seeing none, would the applicant like to speak?
Hello, my name is Art Kalajian, the architect on this proposal. And after I'm done, I think the pastor might want to talk too. He's behind me. In lieu of a 3D perspective, I thought of doing that initially, but I think the paramount concern was the relationship of the building in relation to the people. And what we did is we hired a landscape architect to review this, and we felt a profile section through what you see up there right now would be more beneficial. The main thing I want to stress was that there is a berm that's still there. It climbs up almost 6 feet in height. What we're proposing initially, what you see with that typical view line, an initial planting, which is anywhere from 6 to 10 feet, would the list of the trees and the heights show there, that it would actually screen the height of the building as someone's walking by there at year 1. In year 12 to 15, effectively the height of the landscaping will reach the eave of the building. But what you have to realize is, in perspective, depending on how far away you are, the relationship varies. But at some point, what we try to show here is that we're really creating a very thick intertwining vegetation that's like a landscape wall, which is what I tried to present earlier last time, but hopefully these drawings will convey that a little bit better. There is a berm, and then on top of that, there's going to be about 30 evergreen trees of varying species. The landscape architect picked conifer fir and arborvitae. The arborvitae allows the landscaping to be closer together, and then the larger evergreens will need more space to grow, but ultimately they will grow quite tall, higher than the building at some point. Besides that, there are several 21 deciduous shrubs. So in effect, it's a wall of variety of landscaping that will abut this, and then to walk by looking at that, they will have to see through the landscaping to see the building at all. And I think it would, the other thing that this profile I think helps show is that the building itself is sculptured as a stepped building. It's not just a wall 30 feet high, or it has, the first part of the building is 1 story, then it sets back about 12 to 14 feet, and then it rises up to a eve of about 20, I think it was 22 feet, and then the average height is 30. So the reason for the height is 2/3 of the building is a gymnasium, and gyms require the minimum height of ceiling height of 20 feet, and our eve height is pretty much close to the minimum height of a gymnasium. And with the sloped roof, you reach the 30-foot height, because we did not want to put a flat roof to fight the architecture of the sloped structure. So I was trying to be sensitive to the existing structure and blend it in. Also, the rear of the structure is the same height of the existing church, and the eve height's identical, and then eventually steps itself up. So what I tried to do was find a type of form and shape that matches the existing and be sensitive to the non-wall effect, which I thought I did initially, but I think it was hard to convey, and hopefully this rendering with the profile helps convey that. Besides that, I reduced the glazing, which was a concern. I knocked off about 35 to 40% of the glass height on the upper clerestory windows as part of the reduction in the height. So there's less glazing, and there was concern of noise coming from that. So that helped with the sound barrier to some degree. So we feel like the church has resolved, hopefully, most of the issues by creating this strong landscaping barrier, as well as reducing the height to the required amount, and reducing some of the glazing as well. And hopefully you'll see that and approve it. Pastor, I don't know if you want to add anything or not, but
Good evening. My name is Simeon Timbuk. I'm the senior pastor of Bethesda Romanian Pentecostal Church. As our architect said, we try to accommodate and to improve the proposed plan. And I have several reasons, I think, to approve this proposed building. We think we meet the requirements, the ordinances in the spirit and in the law, the city code, the setback, the heights. We also went some extra steps to accommodate our neighbors or their concerns regarding landscaping, extra trees, higher trees. We need this addition for our church to be able to function, to minister to our people, the children, the youth, also the families we have. The location, though, also was a concern regarding the location, if we'll be able to move the location from the north side to the south side. The fact is that this is the best location we can have for this proposed building. As I said last time, here is not a flood area. If we move the location, we discussed about it, and we try to think about and how to locate. And the fact is that where is the parking lot, we have to take several spaces or many spaces. Also, there is a wetland area, and that will affect the environment more. And those parking spaces, we have to relocate where the proposed building is now. And that will affect our neighbors even more because of the cars, the noises, and the people in that area. But having the building in that area, and we don't have an access from Tucker, all the access will be from Long Lake to this proposed building that will create, I think, the least intrusive for our neighbors. And also, there was a discussion last time that the church doesn't pay taxes. But one of the neighbors saying that the church doesn't pay taxes. Indeed, the church is a tax-exempt organization, it's 501c3, but our people in the church, they pay taxes, every one of them. Even myself speaking to you. And most of the people are part of the city of Troy. They live in Troy. I live in Sterling Heights, not so far away. I have my daughter living in Troy. They are contributing to the community of Troy. We as a church, we are involved in the community of Troy. So I don't think that, the fact that the church doesn't pay taxes should be taken into consideration. That would be a discrimination. I think we had the right, as a church to function properly and to have all the function we need. And also, we are at this location now. We started in 1997, the building, but we are since 2000 at this location. So it's about 17 years. And we try to live in peace with our neighbors as much as possible. Sometimes, indeed, when we have some special events, there are more people than usual, and maybe there are some youth making some noise. But most of the time, 99+%, we were quiet, a quiet community, also involved, in the community. As I said previously, road taking care of roads and also helping the community even with the voting. So I plea to you tonight to approve our project and to be able to grow and to function and to enjoy. And also, we don't want to create, to our neighbors any hardships. We'll work as much as we can, to accommodate and to have, as we already have in the plans, the trees and keep the environment nice and clean. And I plead to you to approve.
Mr. Salvador.
I just want to clarify for the record that the consultant's report did not specify the tax exempt status of the church as being any type of an issue, and the Planning Commission did not raise the tax exempt status of the church as an issue at the previous Planning Commission meeting.
Good.
Indeed, I was one of the neighbors.
Right. I had one question. So it seems like the landscaping and the additional trees are a significant new feature from the last meeting. And I was curious because I think in the report it mentioned there are currently trees on the site.
Yes.
But those are all dead. Or,
No.
No? I
No,
thought there was a
there was-
significant number of dead trees.
I'm sorry. There was a picture, presented last time, but that picture was taken during the winter time or early springtime, and the tree was not blossoming at the time. So it looked like it was a bad or died dead tree, but if you look now,
You could, yeah, if you look at the screen behind you, what's green is the replacement trees that are replacing the dead trees. Most of them are to the south of the property, not where we're talking about. So the effective screening we're talking about is all on the north. It's going to be all new.
Mhm.
But the dead trees are taken into account as well.
So there were multiple dead trees on the
Yes, but we are accounting that, but it doesn't impact the location we're at, so, but you can see it on the green dots are new trees. There's a list of gray bars there that represent the dead trees. So what we did is replace dead trees with new trees and place it in areas we thought was significant.
The reason I asked the questions was about the maintenance of the
Okay.
trees. So,
Yeah, and I think we would have to have a maintenance agreement as well when this gets approved, at some point they would be obligated to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask one follow-up question. And then, did I read right? Are you saying that the trees that you plant currently will be an effective screen, or that they will become an effective screen in
Effective
12
initially,
to
if you look at
15
the
years?
3D, not the 3D, but the profile again, the darker tree, when you look at the smaller tree that's next to the person in black, that's the growth initially, as well as the evergreen that's in black. So when you look at the black trees, that's initially, and when you look at the person walking by with the perspective view that a person has, it's blocking basically the building initially. The green colored and the reddish colored tree represents maturity at a later date that climbs up to the height of the tree, and the landscape architect projected that at 12 to 15 years. But we do have an effective screen, which I want to point out initially, with the shrubs and the arborvitae, as well as a berm that's going to stay at about 5 to 6 feet high currently. So you do have a berm that's solid as well as planting on top of that berm. So what you're going to have initially is, a 12-foot high screening interlaced with lower shrubs.
Thank you. Mr. Edmonds?
Well, I was out there today, spent over a half an hour driving along Tucker and also on the other side of the church in the parking lot. I drove the complete perimeter of the parking lot. And I find it incredulous that you would say you've maintained those trees along Tucker. I looked at the ones today. I'm a gardener, and that's a poor maintenance of a tree. How can you guarantee us that any tree you plant now will be a different tree? You had a maintenance agreement when the church was approved. those trees should have been cut down. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Was the sprinkling system installed at the time?
No,
or
no,
is
we
that-
don't have a sprinkler system. No, we don't have a sprinkler system.
Should you have a sprinkler system?
We may have if it's necessary. The fact is, in the last year or so, I mean, we are in the process of building this now for maybe 2 years or so, right? Discussing or so on. We have a contractor doing the landscaping. So I agree that the trees are not as they should be. I agree with that, but we are planting much more trees, and we are going to take care of them. And if we can have an agreement with our neighbors if they.
With all due respect,
yes,
Reverend, if you're not hiring a first-rate maintenance company, I've grown trees on my residence for 30 years, and I know you have to water them. Right. If you don't have a sprinkler system, then those trees are not going to grow.
Yes, especially those on along the Tucker. Yes, there is one that at least one, maybe two, but those who are on the east side, the pine trees, they are well maintained. And
I would grant you those did look really good. Right.
Yeah,
I agree. But
I understand and I accept. Yeah,
you're not being very good neighbors to the people on Tucker who have to look at those dead trees. Thank you.
Would you be willing to put a
Ms. Cruz?
Yes, you can.
It seems to me that the last time that you were in front of the Planning Commission and we asked for the 3D renderings, it was because not all of us that sit on the Planning Commission are architects or engineers. Some of us come from different backgrounds than that. And you were proposing and correct me if I'm wrong, a 19,000 square foot addition. And we wanted specifically to be able to see the scale of a 19,000 square foot addition in relation to the existing structure and the houses that surrounded your church. So today you come in front of me with trees. You come in front of me with trees, and you're asking me to visualize architecturally a 19,000 square foot addition and visualize that against the existing structure and the surrounding structures. Frankly, I can't do it. That's not my background. That's why we asked for a 3D rendering. It is helpful to us in the decision-making process. And when we ask for it, it's because we need it. It's nice to have. And I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed, and I thought we were pretty clear in our request.
What I like to bring up there is the, what do you call it, the aerial photo with the landscaping that shows the existing homes. And I thought this would be just as beneficial to see the relationship of the homes and the landscape.
Nope, it's not.
It's not a 3D.
It's flat. It's two-dimensional. It doesn't help me.
Because it did mention aerial views.
Mr. Hudson?
Yeah.
Let me be a dissenting voice here. I'm a lawyer. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an architect. I understand perspectives. I understand drawings. And this is an instance where we have approved projects with drawings and not 3D projections. It seems pretty clear to me. It's not this one. The other one, we had the black little figure showing the evergreens and the trees. And to my knowledge, we have never questioned an applicant when we talk about landscaping as how high the trees are going to be in 15 years. And we're satisfied that usually they put in an 8, maybe a 10-foot pine tree. A pedestrian walking by, that does a shielding. So I'm not as disturbed as some of my fellow commissioners on this. That's all I got to say.
Mr. Tagle.
Have you had or taken an opportunity to talk to the neighbors?
Yes, the first time before we came.
Before you came the first time?
Yes.
So after last meeting, nothing's between then and now?
No, we didn't talk.
That is something that we try to encourage when there's such opposition between a development and the neighbors to see if there is common ground. But be that as it may. I think my disappointment is somewhere along the lines of what Ms. Cruz said. We'd ask you to present this so that all of us, maybe some of us can picture it and some of us can't, but to help us, help you. And you chose not to do that. You chose to present a section like this, and it doesn't answer the question that was posed to you several months ago. The other thing I guess I would just put out here, I've looked at your plans. You've heard the comments from last meeting, and those plans were drawn up in 2015 according to the data on the drawings. So they haven't changed at all. Have you even considered trying to take a little different approach to solving the church's needs and also solving the massing and the length of the building with a little bit different approach than what you did 2 years ago?
Well, the issue is that every space there in the classrooms, the church actually wanted additional. This was up to 22,000, and we did scale it down at one point, but you haven't seen that. But what we have here is what the church felt was the minimum that they felt they could live with. We did scale it down. I could show you the old prints, but I've actually spent more than 3 years on this thing, three-dimensionally trying to make it attractive. I could reduce the square footage, but they're not going to be happy. There's only so much you could do with a gym. It's a volume that's 100 feet by 60 feet.
You're missing my point. I'm not asking you to not provide the church what they feel their minimum requirement is. What I'm asking you is if you take that minimum requirement and take the comments that you heard from us last time, or maybe from the audience last time, and see what you can come up with other than what we're seeing tonight, because nothing's changed tonight. I'm looking at the drawings that we saw last time, and all I'm hearing is that we're going to...
Well, the height of the building did drop.
By how much?
3 feet.
3 feet. I mean,
and
I
it was
appreciate the
most.
effort, but 3 feet on a building of this magnitude, of this height, is minuscule. So I guess I'm just, with the direction that we had given you last time, I am disappointed with what you've come back with.
If I may, our understanding was mostly that the concern regarding the trees, the buffer, that was our understanding.
I'm sorry, that was a misunderstanding. If you were to read the report and what the comments were, it had a lot to do with the massing of the building, the length of the building, the uninterrupted length of the building, and the height of the building. And what I'm hearing is the solution was to hide it behind some trees.
Yeah, but we need the building as it is to function properly.
I disagree with you. I've been in this business a long time, and there are a lot of solutions to your needs other than this one. And solutions that may find common ground with the neighborhood or may find more common ground with our fellow commissioners.
And also to regard the 3D, we try to find someone, and with our people that are in the field, and nobody was available. At the end, there was someone but he said that he cannot do it now, and we thought that having this, with the view and the view line, that it's more helpful than it was previously presented.
Mr. Edmonds.
So your architect is not able to produce a 3D drawing? Is that what I'm getting from all this? Can you?
No, we discussed
Why
it.
didn't you, sir?
Yes, we discussed it, and what the pastor felt was the landscaping and the profile was more paramount, and we felt that it would help explain it better than a perspective view. This shows more detail of what it would be. Like, when you do a perspective, where are you going to stand? How many choices do you, we could take it at the street level, we could take it from Tucker looking at it, we could take it from the opposite end. I suggested 2 views from looking down the street, but I thought this gave more information that was more valuable. And it was maybe a bad judgment on my part as well, but this profile tells a lot if you study it, more than a perspective would.
I just have a real problem when we give clear direction and you choose to not.
A perspective, I guess, if that's what you want. We just felt it wasn't that credible as far as information. So it was our mistake, I guess, that we didn't produce it.
Mr. Tig.
I just want to make sure that you're understanding my point. I'm not asking you to produce a perspective for the sake of producing a perspective. The perspective has value to it in selling what you want to sell or convincing us this is the right size or mass or shape of this building in this neighborhood. So producing a perspective isn't necessarily going to get it over the goal line. I think you need to really consider what you've heard at last meeting, at this meeting, and see what does that mean, and then put that into a perspective and really convince this commission that it is a good fit in this neighborhood. So it's not just about doing a perspective.
One of the key things we look at is compatibility with the neighborhood, the other uses, harmony. So the perspective tells us that, but also the design is what's going to drive that as well.
Well, the only thing I would like to add for the churches, because we had a lot of hours of discussion, is other than scaling down the square footage, there's not much we could do with the height of a gym unless he throws out the gym. Because basically, the other part of the second floor is a small youth area, about 3,000 square feet, which matches the height of the second floor. But as a gym with a sloped roof, there's not much we could do other than have a partial gym. But if that's what, and they also have a large group of people that wanted a certain minimum size fellowship hall for roughly 450 to 500 people. Sure, we could scale that down, but it doesn't achieve his needs. But that's the basic architectural parameters I had to work with a site that you can't build anywhere else because it's fully developed. There's wetlands wherever else we could put anything there. So our hands are tied with his need and where to put it. And if you say that's too big, the only solution is to achieve partial goals that he would like to have. And if that's, and I'm not getting a clear picture from him, I must tangle if the goal is to get a smaller building. That's what I'm reading. But scale-wise, architecturally-wise, you can't change more than what you see there unless you reduce the square footage. I don't know how else I could. The perspective would help sell the three-dimensional feeling of the building I tried to achieve, sculpturing it, and maybe that would help sell that. But I think it's going to be an attractive-looking building, but flat-looking elevations probably are hard to visualize that. But I don't, for his behalf, I would like to present a 3D of what we have, if that would be a potential of getting this approved, and you could visualize it better with the landscaping at the first year, you know.
Mr. Edmonds?
You had, I believe, was it 5 different classrooms that are in this, next to the building? Next to the gym?
Next to the gym.
5 different classrooms.
Yes.
Why, I was out there today. Why is this the only place those classrooms could be put? Couldn't they be put on the other side of the church? Why, are they integral to the gymnasium? And for what reason? Perhaps you could help me clarify that.
As I said, if we move on the other part of the church, there is the parking lot. And we will not have enough spaces. And
I'm not talking about the parking lot. I'm talking
we don't have any other as I said, there is the corner southeast, where is no parking lot, and that it's the wetland area, and also to have the classroom next to Long Lake. that would be very difficult for kids and parents to come. This has access directly from the actual building. So everything is incorporated in one building, and that for the safety of children, I think it's better to have like that, and for the parents also. You know, so if we divide in different buildings, I think that will make a bigger impact and also would be less safe for us.
Ms. Cruz?
Wasn't there an issue that was discussed at the last meeting with respect to parking and whether or not the parking lot was sufficient? And would the 19,000 square foot addition have an impact on the church's ability to have sufficient parking when it's in a growth mode? Does anyone, am I alone on that?
No, you're correct.
I think the planning director and I discussed the parking. The use of this building is primarily for youth, which aren't required to have parking, but there is a factor for the fellowship hall. It's not being rented out at the same time simultaneously, so that was something we wrote in the report, that it would be used only by church people, so it's not a simultaneous use of rentable space. It's used by the people of the church, and based on the ordinance, we do meet the parking requirements. But if it was a other type of use, that would be the case, you know. But because it's a youth center and a gymnasium, it's not additive to the parking requirements. The church itself is what dictates that in the sanctuary.
And if I may also, regarding the parking, was the discussion, as I said previously, we have maybe 2 or 3 events in a year, like Christmas, Easter, and or a baptism service, when we have more people coming, but regularly we don't have any problem.
Any other comments?
Yes, Mr. Savina, can you confirm, or Mr. Carlisle, that they do meet all the parking requirements, even with this huge addition?
Go ahead. Report.
He's taking notes.
Yes, when we, and this is not the first church addition that the Planning Commission has reviewed in this respect, when the church addition is building ancillary or auxiliary uses to a existing building where they're not going to increase the amount of occupancy in the primary use of the church, we do not require additional parking as a result of the addition.
Thank you.
Mr. Savina?
If I could state Mr. Tagle's concern a different way. Looking at the floor plan of the proposed addition, I'm looking at 14 feet depth of bleachers with an additional space here. I'm looking at the site plan that pushes the building addition to the 50-foot setback, which is the max, and the height is at the 30-foot height, which is the max. It just seems like the site is maxed out. Mr. Faison made the comment that the Planning Commission considers compatibility. Well, they do that because it's a standard of approval for special uses. This is a special use. So it's more than just doing it because we want to do it. The Planning Commission is required to apply the standards for special use approval. You know, I guess maybe the Planning Commission is wondering did you squeeze this as much as you could squeeze it? Is 50 feet the furthest away you can push that building, given the fact that you had a number of neighbors expressing their concern about the impact of this building on their homes? Is this absolutely necessary moving forward? And is there any way to come up with design solutions, as Mr. Tagle indicated?
The fact that are the bleachers there, that is not a concern for us.
People in chairs are less.
Yeah, we are not concerned, and we don't know if we are going to have them built. What we need, the room is for our fellowship room. And we are a community, we are a close community, Romanian-American community, and we like to be together, fellowshipping together, and we need more for that. Right now, when we have a fellowship, we we use the main lobby, and we have a small fellowship room. So this is why it's so large. If it's large, multifunctional or multi-purpose room.
Yeah, I should add, it's a stackable bleacher, so when it's pushed back, it becomes more table and chair space. That was the intent for it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Tagle.
I want it to be on the record that I am not saying to you, diminish the program that the church is asking you to do. I want that to be very clear, because that's all I'm hearing. We can't reduce this. This is what the church wants. Can we do this? Can we do that? That's not my position. And I don't necessarily think it's the purview of this commission to be telling you what the program that the church should have to fulfill whatever their needs are. What I am saying, it's my professional opinion, that this program that the church has given you could be done in a building that's not quite so overpowering and so massive. It could be broken down into pieces. Yes, a gymnasium is a big piece. No doubt about it. We're not going to break that down. But all of the ancillary spaces that have been stacked around it, on top and at the same height of it, I don't believe that they necessarily have to take this form to be successful and to work at what the church wants to accomplish. And in doing something, looking at that, you might find a solution that would fly with the neighbors and that would be more compatible with the scale of the neighborhood. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying reduce the program.
One thing that you refreshed my memory, I thought of pushing the building forward more, but I didn't want to give prominence to this addition. I wanted the sanctuary to be the prominent element, so that's why you see it set back about 30 or 40 feet. If we try to change the shape of that, that pushes it more forward, you know, if the square footage, and I don't want to fight the architecture of the church. I want that to be the strong element. That was one reason why I came up with this shape. Just so, but we could squeeze a few feet here and there. I don't think they would mind losing like that, like 5 or 6 more feet away from the street if that makes a big difference. But other than that, it would be a major hit to the church's needs, I think. But they're willing to compromise, I think, a little bit of that width possibly, but not to the extent where we had to reshape that to the point where, you know, you look at that plan, 60% of it is the gym, and that's the height of the, you know, the basic element of the building. We don't want to float any more classrooms on any other part of the building to get the number of classrooms there, so the only other choice is to eliminate some classrooms. Like 3 classrooms up near the street could be modified possibly to 2 and scale that back, you know, 5 to 10 feet. Maybe that's something we could do if that makes the big difference here, but other than that, it would be a major design change, I think, which they would be unhappy with. It's just, you know, that's how I dealt with this design for several years. Off and on, we tried many shapes. You're seeing the fulmination of it, but I tried off-site. I could show plans of that, but I don't think the neighbors would be happy because the biggest concern was to not get parking or noise on Tucker. So we felt this was the best way to preserve the sanctity and the peacefulness of it by doing that. But, you know, we could do other things like eliminate some of the glazing, more glazing. But other than that, there's not much you could do other than doing a drastic change, you know. So, you know, I leave it up to you people to decide, but I could present another perspective to show you what it really looks like in a 3D. You know, it's my fault. I offered it to the pastor and we felt this is more useful. So my mistake, you know, I did see the 3D as the report, but I was hoping this would suffice.
So, just so I'm clear, are you saying that no other configuration of that building will work?
With the square footage that they require, what you look at here is there's a firewall that separates this from the other. You're to paste a building up against there and lose 10 feet of it, I would have to eliminate all those classroom windows of the existing classroom. That's why you have that little courtyard there. I did not want to lose the daylighting into those classrooms, so I set the building off there. The storage possibly we're going to lose some of that storage area, you know, in a combination of that and the bleacher area, we could effectively lose 10 feet, but then we lose, how do we deal with the loss of classrooms, which they wanted? You know, there's a tweaking of this that I could do, but I don't know if it would satisfy 10 feet of cutting it across the top would make the difference or not. But to that extent, that's what I could see happening, and he would lose maybe one classroom by doing that. But if it's something that's you feel adamant about, you know, we could do a compromise to that extent. But the height and shape would still be the same.
It would just seem, based on the comments, that the 3D rendering, in addition to some creative thought by you about a reconfiguration, might be productive. You're saying, is it enough? I don't think I'll speak for myself. I can't say it's enough without really seeing it and seeing it in context. Mr. Craig.
Yeah, I'm focused on the section 9.03. And it basically says the planning commission shall consider compatibility with adjacent uses. That's my focus, how you're relating to the residential streets right across Tucker. And what I see, I would like to see, I should say, is a viewpoint from the front porch of those homes as to what you're proposing. Because I can't, you put a guy on your sidewalk on your side of the street, but I want to see what the neighbors, that's the adjacent compatibility issue that I would like to see. So when you offer some kind of drawings or perspectives, I'd like to see their view on how it looks. And especially with, and that was nice that you put the trees, as you plant them and what they'll grow to. That's helpful for me. But I don't think it's, if I was living across on Tucker, I don't want to wait 8 years or 10 years to create this landscape.
Screen.
Yeah, it's the screen, thank you. So I'm just saying, I think you look at it from the people on Tucker who've been there and see what they see. That's my concern of this whole project. The massing, I understand, it would be nice to reduce it. I understand. I looked at your drawing and I understand why you utilize those spaces to achieve the goals of the church. That is not my biggest issue, although you did lower that, that 3 foot, it's marginal, it's not a big deal, but it does make you compliant with all the setbacks. All that said, bottom line is just what I started off saying, compatibility with adjacent neighbors. That's what I want to see. I want to see what that landscape screening looks like from their point of view, from year 1 to, let's say, year 4. Let's not go to 8. I don't want, I realize it takes time to, you can't put in, 30-foot high trees. It's just incredibly expensive, and they may not even take when you move a tree that big. But anyway, that's what I'd like to see.
Basically, from the view of a neighbor, 10 feet moving the building in 10 feet is not going to.
No, it won't. It won't.
We need a perspective to really show that. And
I'd just like to see it from them, and I think everything else, if it all complies, it's my biggest issue is their view, the Tucker residents' view, and what kind of screening you're offering them. You're lowering the berms slightly, I take it. You're not, the yellow line I saw through the green, is that where you're lowering the berm to?
What you see in this profile is actually what it will be, and then the black trees shown there is what it is in year 1.
I couldn't find that in my agenda piece. That's a new one, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, if you could include something like that, but a little more from the Tucker viewpoint, that would be appreciated.
Okay.
Can you get the image for the
Redmond?
You don't have to plant only 6 foot high evergreen trees. And I think those are 6 to 8 foot evergreens.
I think the landscape architect actually specified 8 to 10 fir trees, and then the arborvitae being closer were 6 to 7 feet. And the linden trees were sporadic in different locations.
That's a deciduous. That doesn't
Yeah.
help screen the view in the wintertime. But I know you can successfully plant 10 to 12 foot evergreens. Yes, you will definitely have to sprinkle them and make sure they're watered and maintained and pruned. And I have a great reservation about your ability, your credibility in the existing trees. Why did you wait so long? You knew that was a sore point from all the residents. Why did you wait so long? Why not? You've got 850 members. Do you not have 15 or 20 that would be glad to go out there and take care of those trees? Plant a new one? I just think I'm really...
I understand and I take responsibility for that. As I said, especially along the Tucker, we thought that by now we'll be done with the project, you know, and it was our mistake. But those trees on the east side of the property, they are, you know, tall, healthy, and nice. Just along the Tucker, and also along the Tucker, there are kind of different type of trees that they're planting.
But you didn't address the neighbors' concern on Tucker, who are the folks who are definitely upset with this, and I can understand. I was out there. I parked in their driveways and I looked.
I understand that I don't want to, you know, go back and forth, and I don't want to be disrespectful. I didn't know about their concern until our previous meeting, that they were concerned about the trees. Nobody brought to my attention until that meeting. You know, I don't have any communication brought to me about that fact.
Well, I think at the last meeting
there were
last
meeting,
audience people who said they had talked to you way before that.
Nobody talked to me.
Thank you.
I say it, and nobody talked to me. If somebody would talk to me, that.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Did you have a comment?
Yeah. Even if you didn't know, since April 25th, you've had a considerable amount of time to reach out to them and talk to them, and I find it surprising. Part of being in Troy is that we build community by talking to one another. When you know people are upset, you should make an effort to talk to them.
I understand.
Mr. Savana.
So just to reiterate, this is a special use and there are subjective standards that the Planning Commission applies, one of them being compatibility. I can't stress that enough. When we talk about meeting the ordinance, meeting the requirements, those special use standards are paramount to you having success with an approval from the Planning Commission. So we already had a public hearing. You heard the comments from the residents. You heard discussion from the Planning Commission. At the first meeting, you were postponed. You've heard the comments again this evening. I'm reading the room here. It seems like we're going down the road of a second postponement. This is an opportunity. This is a bit of a lifeline here. I think this is an opportunity. You really need to put your best foot forward, because I think two postponements, I think, is realistic. I don't know if you're going to get a third. So you really need to put your best foot forward here. Okay, I can't stress that enough. You can be considerate of the compatibility of the neighbors and take your best foot forward.
I don't know if this is, so I'm going to ask if this is okay. We have several churches on that side of Troy that are very big. One that comes to mind is Kensington. I also suggest that you reach out to some of the other area churches that their mass is big, and find out what they did to meet the compatibility requirements. That might be helpful. It makes sense to me that we're not putting any limit on the size of the property or the size of the building. I mean, but the idea would be to do it in a way that it fits in with the surrounding neighborhood, that the neighbors are not unhappy with it.
Are we ready for a motion to postpone?
Mr. Chairman, just a reminder, one of the residents gave me a PowerPoint. Obviously, this is not a public hearing. It's your purview whether to accept comment or not. And I don't know if the neighbor still wants to speak, but there was a PowerPoint that was handed to me prior to this item being discussed.
We got to hear those.
I'm fine with hearing that person speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
you signed in?
Yes, we have. We actually the residents at 2015 Tucker, the first house. We put together a PowerPoint presentation that I think is going to address a lot of your guys' concerns.
Forwards, backwards.
Okay. Just one quick thing. It's two of us. It's a little bit lengthy, so I know it's 3 minutes per. Can we take
about
turns?
5 to 6 minutes.
This will cover a lot of your guys' the concerns that you guys brought up.
It's a half hour. I'm not.
No,
they said
it's literally
5 to 6 minutes.
Yeah, like 5
So
to 6
yes,
minutes.
okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name.
1 second, I got to figure this out here. All right. Go.
Go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Danny Salem. I am a resident of 2015 Tucker Drive. We are actually the first house on Tucker on the left-hand side. I'm here with my brother Sam Salem and my father, who is homeowner Farouk Salem. So just to kind of overall, the residents of 2015 Tucker, we oppose the proposed addition on the north side of the Romanian church for many reasons, and which I'll talk about. The first thing, the impact on Tucker residents is the appearance. So a large facility, as the one proposed, does not really mesh well with the current residential area. It is not harmonious with the adjacent property. Our property would span over a large portion of this new addition. Therefore, we would be looking at a giant gymnasium / an entertainment facility. The addition would not only dwarf our home in the neighborhood, but many other homes in the neighborhood. Landscaping, specifically trees, have not been maintained for roughly 20 years that we have lived in that home. We are the first homeowners. So it's really hard to believe that new landscaping would be maintained as the few trees that are already there have not been maintained. So taking a look, if I can direct your attention on the right-hand side, you can see in the highlighted yellow is where our home is, and the proposed addition outlined in red, and then a key on the bottom. You can see how close our property lies with the church, and then adding this facility would bring it even closer, within about 100 feet. So this is actually on the left-hand side, a view from our front door. This was taken actually just yesterday. You can see how close the church actually is, and then placing that large facility where the hill is would be a very close proximity to where we live. So this is what the landscape looks like now. You can see not very well maintained, and this is actually what we've been looking at for 10 plus years. This is not just a 2-year picture. This is 10 plus years of what we've been looking at, where the environment hasn't really been maintained in terms of trees. Noise, lighting, and the odor. Due to the close proximity of the massive building, residents will be negatively impacted by the noise and lighting. So I do have elderly parents that go to sleep relatively early, so this would negatively impact them. Landscaping will not be able to completely mask the noise, lighting, and odor coming from the entertainment facility, and will likely not be maintained based on prior history. So this is another view on the left-hand side from the end of my driveway, again showing that close proximity of where this building would be, and then from the mailbox, again very close in proximity to our home. Our home values, so home values will decrease 10 to 15% if the addition is built on the north side of the property. So my mother and father, very hardworking individuals, factory workers, saved up every penny they had for 10 years to build our home. And so it would be unfair to them and unfair to the residents in our street that their property value diminished by roughly 10 to 15%. Just think, who would want to buy a home in front of a giant entertainment facility or a multi-use facility? I certainly wouldn't. Parking issues. So we've had many instances where individuals attending the church park on Tucker and then they walk over to the church. There have been also many instances where we've seen cars parked on grassy areas due to the lack of available parking spots. So the new addition of roughly 20,000 square foot facility will likely worsen this problem. And with the current parking problems the church is already experiencing, it really begs the question whether this new addition could even support the additional traffic. This is a picture provided to me that was taken on 5/7/17, showing on a non-holiday day that demonstrates the parking issues. You can see many cars parked in non-parking spots. Again, this creates a hazard for emergency vehicles if they need to come in as well. Impact on the street. So Tucker is a dirt road, as you are aware, which is maintained very well by the city. But construction from this new proposed addition would cause damage to the road. We would have to now worry about the safety of my nieces and nephews due to heavy machinery, and then we'd also have to worry about debris and damage to car tires. So as tax-paying residents, we should not be burdened with further damage to the street and additional traffic for the addition of an entertainment facility that provides really no benefit to the residents of Tucker. So the proposed addition on the north side of the church property would be detrimental to the residents of Tucker Drive and would add no additional benefit to the residents. Negative implications include appearance that is not harmonious with the adjacent property, burden from noise, lighting, and odor, decrease in home value, and worsening of parking. So our hope is that the Planning Commission places residents of Tucker at the center of their decision and oppose the proposed addition on the north side of the church. And our recommendation is that the addition be constructed on the south side of the church, away from the residential area.
And we'd just like to state for the record that nobody from the church, where the first house, so if anyone's going to be negatively impacted, would be us. Nobody from the church has came to us and spoke to us about this actual building. We actually found out from a neighbor. So we'd just like to set that straight. We have not heard any contact or anything from the church.
Is that your presentation?
Yes, thank you for your time.
Very efficient.
Thank you, guys.
If I may address the...
No, I think...
talked to their parents.
Thank you.
I talked to their parents.
Thank you. We're done with public comments.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ken Androni. I live at 2097 Tucker. I live diagonally across from the church. I've owned property in Troy for 40 years. I've lived on Tucker Street for going on 38 years. So I've seen a lot of progress come through the city. And I'm not opposed to the church constructing a building, but a moderate-sized building. I mean, this is a monolithic, huge building that the people on Tucker are going to have to see. I'm going to have to drive by there for the next, 15 years and sort of hide and not look and hide in the shadow so I don't have to see this huge building every day. You know, think about it if you lived on that street. How would you like to go by this huge building and drive by the shadow every day? You know, that's one problem. Problem number two is I drive home many times and I see cars parked on Tucker Street and they're using the facilities at the church. When they originally proposed building the church, they wanted to cut a street into Tucker, an access. And they said, we were only going to use the church for Wednesdays for choir practice. Well, that church is being used almost every single night, 7 days a week. Now, I heard someone throw out a word of 400 or 500 people for the facility that they want to propose. If you put 4 people in an automobile, that's 100 cars. Where in the heck are they going to go? It's beyond my comprehension. Now, I applied to build an auxiliary garage. I live on an acre plus land. The city had a problem with people building oversized garages. Well, they told me that I had to fit certain requirements to appease my neighbors and to appease the surrounding area. I built a garage and I had to fall within the parameters of what the city required. A mean height, okay, and a size comparable to my footprint of my home. This building that they're proposing is 3 times probably larger than what really should be on that footprint of property. I've gone around through the other churches in the city of Troy, and they have vast amounts of land, and they don't have a big dramatic impact on the adjacent property. Show me one instance where there's a big giant 30-foot building 15, 20 foot from the property line anywhere in the city of Troy. This is not Hamtramck, this is not Detroit. I moved out to the suburbs for the vast rolling greenery. I did not move here so that I would see buildings from property line to property line like you would find in the inner city. I oppose this, and you have it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does anyone else want to speak?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify. I think, do you want this at 5 minutes or 3 minutes?
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
First, I'd like to apologize for my behavior last time. I'm emotionally involved with a home that we've lived in for 24 years. I'm Deb Tosh. We're 2088 Tucker. Again, the compatibility, we do not believe that this is compatible, this 19,000 square foot entertainment facility that they're having, school, whatever. is going to be massive. The average square feet of the homes that are, the 4 impacted homes, is 2,300 square feet. You take 19,000 square foot building, you're going to put 8 homes basically in this facility. That's building 8 homes, so there's no greenery left. The environment, the way the access point, they were talking about the windows, from where the storage and the kitchen's going to be, is right by our bedroom window. We're going to get the westerly winds. We're going to get the fumes from that kitchen coming into our bedroom. And again, who is going to buy our house? Would you buy it? We'll sell it to you for a good price right now, before this is built. We talked about the trees. You're a gardener. I appreciate it. I have, just take a look at, they have not been maintained. Our trees were planted 22 years ago. The average circumference of our trees is 36 inches. Theirs is 14 because they haven't maintained it. We've watched them over the years. They'll go 3 weeks without cutting the grass, up to the point where it's going to pass, the ordinance of height. This year, they're very diligent. It's amazing how much, they're taking care of their property. But the ash trees have been dead, and they're just basically bushes now. They don't care on that side. The pine trees that are along our driveway, yes, they are big. However, they have needle cast disease, just like the ones that we have along our property. We're losing them. We're doing everything we can. We're paying big bucks to keep them alive, but they have the same disease that our trees have, and we're going to lose them. Eventually, we will have no buffer between our home and this massive 19,000 square foot building. Thank you, and again, I apologize for my behavior last time.
Thank you.
I couldn't get up here faster. My name's John Tosh. I'm married to Debbie, and we've been living there 24 years, long before that church was built. So we are definitely historians of that church. Back in 1996, they applied for their first special use permit. The pastor said they had 165 souls in that church, and that they were trying to fit that exact church on a 3.8 acre piece of land. The planning commission kept telling them, you're building too big of a church for that piece of land. Somehow they acquired that entire floodplain parking lot. And with that, they convinced the planning commission that they were going to have the green buffer, which is north of the church, and the parking was going to be south of the church. And they couldn't access Tucker because it was a dirt road. They couldn't access John R. because the line of sight problems, okay? So they finally got approval in 1997. That's 20 years ago. Now the pastor is claiming he's got 822 souls. That's a 400% increase in 20 years. In 10 years more, if you take a linear relationship, they're going to have well over 1,100 parishioners. That parking lot is only 191. You can divide it, whatever, they don't carpool to that church. I appreciate all the comments you had. We agreed. We were expecting to see a 3D rendition. It's not there. I have personally experienced a reduction in my property value when I went for a home equity loan. The pink says, what's the view from the front yard, from the side yards? And all they said was church. And they took it off 10 or 15%. Tucker's a dirt road. That if they're going to do all that construction, when they constructed that church, they ran over a pipe, and it used to flow like crazy when they first put in the drains. When the contractors went over that ditch, they concaved the pipe, and now it doesn't drain right, and that's why we have issues down Tucker. It hasn't been fixed in 20 years. And like I'll say it, we've asked the church. Our neighbor wrote a nice letter 5 to 10 years ago about the fact that these trees aren't being maintained. Neither the city nor the church did any action. And he can give you that letter that he wrote. And that's all. Please, just think about living next door to that thing. Would you want to be that? I don't think we would anymore. It's only 40 years since we've been in Troy. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Okay, are we ready to bring it back to the table? A discussion? Or are we ready for a resolution? Ms. Cruz?
You know, we can postpone our decision and ask the church to come back with the 3D rendering and address some of the other issues that have come forward tonight. But I will tell you that I'm concerned about the comments that we've received in emails and from the public that have spoken both at the public hearing initially when this plan came before us and then again tonight that lead me to believe that the church has not been the best neighbor it could have been, not in terms of communicating with the surrounding residents or in maintaining their property, their landscaping, or addressing some of the other concerns. So I'm just saying at this point, I could go either way. I mean, I can postpone and give the church another chance, but I really think at some level there has to be a paradigm shift at the leadership of that church if the residents and the church are going to be compatible and harmonious as neighbors in a long-term plan and picture. That's my only comment.
That's a very valid comment, and I agree with a lot of what you said, but I guess my view is leaning toward giving the church an opportunity. They've heard the published comments at least twice. They've heard our comments at least twice. To give them the opportunity to react to those. Mr. Edmonds.
Could I ask Mr. Savina, what essentially is the ramifications of postponement versus denial? What happens if we deny?
If there's a vote for denial, the project is essentially stopped, and the applicant would have to come forward with a brand-new application, pay new fees, and it would start over again. Versus postponement, we would postpone to a date or based on a date or an action, and give the applicant another opportunity to revise the site plan and the special use application to meet the standards.
So if I understand you correctly, denial would force them to bring a new plan.
And I would.
Or not?
I'll speak and I'll let Ms. Dufresne correct me if I misspeak. But denying this application, the applicant would have to come forward with there'd have to be a change of conditions and a significant change of the application to come forward with another application. They couldn't just regurgitate what was just denied.
Thank you.
How'd I do?
That's correct.
If Mike doesn't want to read a resolution, I will.
Sure.
Okay. Resolved that special use approval and preliminary site plan approval for the proposed Bethesda Romanian Pentecostal Church addition, north side of Long Lake Road, east of John R., south of Tucker, 2075 East Long Lake, Section 12, currently zoned R-1C, one family residential district, be postponed for to provide the applicant opportunity to address issues brought up by the Planning Commission tonight.
I just thought of a question.
I'd like to support the motion before.
You can go ahead and support the motion. I just have a question. If we were to postpone and not deny, what course of action would the neighbors have if the church continued down the path of not being the best neighbor that they could be, and did not make sure that the plantings along the berm were thriving and creating the screen that is so important to the neighbors, or not addressing, future parking issues or things of that nature? What recourse do the neighbors really have, if any? Mr. Savedant, Mr. Frame, someone help me.
I'm not, if I'm understanding your question correctly, the neighbors don't really have any recourse. I mean, it's, the church needs to maintain its landscaping, but the neighbors don't really have.
But we do that just through code, through code enforcement. So the neighbors would have to call the city hall and complain through code enforcement that things are not being maintained properly.
Yeah, we would treat the site plan and the landscape plan as much like a contract. So if they show 30 trees and 5 die, and there's 25 trees, we only have 2 full-time inspectors, so we rely on neighbors complaining. I'm somewhat confident, given the situation, that if 5 trees died, there's probably some neighbors in the room that would complain, and we would hope that they would, and we would inspect. And if we found that there was a shortfall, we would communicate with the church and have them replace the trees. And if they didn't replace the trees, we'd ticket them and take them to court.
And the same thing then with potentially 3 weeks without cutting the lawn?
That's correct. Same thing with parking illegally in the aisles. Whatever would be in violation, we would take enforcement action against the church, as we would of any other business or any other property owner in the city.
Thank you.
So Mr. Krent moved, Mr. Sanzika seconded. So I think we're ready for the vote.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Ms. Koopa?
Yes.
Mr. Sanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes. So the motion's carried. Okay, item number 10 on the agenda. Preliminary site plan review, file number SP JPLN 2017-0009, proposed Midtown Place, south of East Maple, east side of Livernois, 1300 to 1310 Livernois, section 34, currently zoned IB, integrated industrial and business, and MR, Maple Road districts. Mr. Carlisle.
Thank you. Mr. Director Savedant has informed me that I have 30 seconds to present my report, so I will be as quick as possible. Planning Commission should be very familiar with this application in front of us, as well as the site. This is the second time that the Planning Commission considered it, and the last time was in June. At that first meeting, there was numerous comments raised by the Planning Commission as well as planning staff in regards to the development, issues such as site layout, pedestrian orientation, orientation of the building, architectural quality, etc. were raised at that meeting. I want to strongly compliment the applicant tonight before us. They listened to our concerns, they listened to the Planning Commission's concerns. In our humble opinion, we think they've made excellent changes to the plan based on those comments. So I'm going to quickly just highlight the changes that the applicant has made to the plan. Overall, they made a significant reorientation of the plan. What they ended up doing was they did lose one building, so they've dropped the number of units from 398 to 362. What that allowed them to do was some significant internal reconfiguration. They've relocated the detention pond. Before it was located more central in the site, which really hampered site development. They relocated farther south along the property line, and in doing so, they were able to incorporate the central boulevard that we had discussed at the prior meeting. With that, they've also created some on-street parallel, what we call on-street parallel parking, to prevent a more urban feel and sense in the development. They've also reoriented the buildings on the south side. If you remember, in the past, they were oriented parallel to the proposed industrial. They've oriented perpendicular, so the view from The difference is usually you're trying to screen internal, and these guys are trying to screen to the south. So what they've ended up doing is presenting a more buffered orientation from the industrial uses to the south. Again, they've removed one apartment building. They've created a more grid-like system, so there's many opportunities to move around the site, both vehicular and pedestrian. They set the buildings closer to the street. They provide on-street parallel parking. They provided both internal streetscape as well as internal placemaking. They've varied the architecture, provided 2 different elevations for the buildings, and they will run those patterns throughout the proposed buildings on site. And they have better distributed the park system or the open space system throughout the development. So overall, we do find that the change in the detention location, the loss of the one apartment building, the reorientation of the buildings, and the incorporation of a central street/boulevard greatly enhances the improvement in layout of the site. The proposed application does not need any variances or any special approvals. It is a by right development, as noted in our report. They have provided the required amount of parking. You will note that there are 11 items listed as conditions in my letter. I want to note that in discussions with Director Savenant and myself, we do not find that these are significant conditions of approval, and we feel like these are all issues that can be addressed between preliminary and final site plan approval. And most of them deal with issues of the landscape plan and just correcting some errors on the landscaping plan. I will note that we do have one concern, and that is the issue of only one trash compactor/dumpster on site. We are unsure if 362 units can be served by one dumpster location/trash compactor. So that would be our only comment that we'd like some clarification from the developer on. But other than that, we do feel that these all these 11 items can be addressed between preliminary and final. We are recommending approval.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was longer than 30 seconds. Apologize.
You did good.
So bring it to the table. Any planning commission questions for Mr. Carlisle? Mr. Savenant.
I just want to echo Ben's comments about the developer partnering with us and listening to comments of staff and planning commission. I just really appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Just one quick question. Ms. Carlisle, you mentioned justifying the one trash compactor, one dumpster and trash compactor. How do we do that? What would that process be?
Well, so if you look above the only trash compactor is located in this location. What the applicant has indicated, if everyone can see the north end, thank you. A little more powerful than mine. The applicant's indicated that basically tenants would have to either walk their trash from their building to that site or put it in their automobile and drive to the site. We would like the applicant to show us where one trash compactor has worked in other developments of this size or nature, and that can be done between preliminary and final, or if they have to, put another trash compactor in somewhere on site, preferably somewhere closer to that side of the development to serve both sides of the development. And again, we hope this is not the issue to hold this up tonight. We really think this can be worked out.
Understood, and that's not why I asked the question. I was just curious what the validation process would be.
It would be something that we would discuss internally with the applicant moving forward. And if they could show evidence that this has worked in other locations that we can verify, then we would be okay with the one. But again, we just have concern about one for this many units.
I understand. Would the applicant like to speak?
I know it's been a long night, just very briefly. I just want to say we are so happy that we did 5 3D renderings and we're able to give those to you. Just the one thing I wanted to point out is this feature right here, which is a linear open space, linear green space that we did, which really unites the project, and we're kind of proud of this. It collects from all of these buildings. There's a collector sidewalk system that leads to this space, and then this sidewalk links everything from the back building all the way up to the front community center. And what we're also proposing to do at these locations right here are do crossings, which are going to be brick paper crossings, so that it will easily allow the buildings on this side to access this central sidewalk as well. And it ties together the open space, the green space here, the courtyard that we're going to develop more thoroughly in final site planning, and then this park space here as well. And we've created additional entrances on the side of the buildings where we didn't have them before in order to facilitate access to both this streetscape and also to that linear sidewalk pedestrian collector.
Any question for the Ms. Cooper? Ms. Cooper, yes.
Yes, so this is the creativity that you were talking about, Mr. Tagle.
Right.
And then one suggestion is on item number 6 in the resolution, either justify one trash compactor or add as required, as opposed to just justifying it, because I would rather see the additional than force them to justify it.
Ms. Cruz?
Of course, I would like for you to make me trash proud, because that's an issue for me. But my question to you is, there's a rendering in here with a chain link fence around the pool. Can we do better than the chain link?
It will not be a chain link.
Not supposed to be.
That will be the
There will be no fence.
picket, well, there has to be a fence around this.
Sure,
Yes. The regular 4-foot wrought aluminum black picket fence. So this was something that the renderer did, the graphic artist did on his own.
It's not going to pick them up.
Okay, so great trash compacting, beautiful fence around the pool.
Because he's not at the mic. The tape.
Any other comments of the Plan Commission? Are you ready for a resolution?
Sure. Who's going to read it?
I'll read it.
Mike did one, I did one, somebody else.
Don?
Done.
Resolution PC 2017-07. Resolved that the preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed Midtown Place Apartments located south of Maple on the east side of Livernois, 1300 to 1310 Livernois, Section 34, within the IB, Integrated Industrial and Business, and MR, Maple Road districts, be granted subject to the following conditions. Number 1, rectify the discrepancy between the unit bedroom count and floor plans. Number 2, add 4 street trees along Livernois. Number 3, correct small discrepancies between the overall site landscape plan, sheet L 1.0, and the detailed landscaping sheets L 2.0 and 2.1. Indicate species and sizes of actual landscape plan. Screen the dumpster and trash compactor. Justify only one trash compactor or provide an additional one if not justified. Replace the sidewalk on Livernois to 8 feet in width. Submit a photometric plan. Submit elevation type. Eliminate the land bank parking because it is not needed. And number 11, add a secondary pedestrian access to the sidewalk along Livernois at the development entrance drive.
Okay, I'll second.
Second, Mr. Krant.
Have we all fallen asleep?
Ready for the vote?
I have a question. Can I?
Yes.
And I asked this last time, and I please forgive me if I forgot. How are you going to phase the project?
We talked about, start a model.
Could you go to the speaker?
Yeah, and speak in the microphone so we can hear your comments can get captured.
Scott Jacobson, with SR Jacobson Development. The plan is to start the model building up front on Livernois because that's going to be our marketing window right up on Livernois. We'll start that building, community center and pool because that's important to show the potential residents that's going to be built. Then go from the back, work our way out. That's kind of the plan. it's a one-phase horizontal development in terms of putting the improvements in. And that's what our plan is.
You think it'll be done within a year or two?
If we get 20, 30 renters a month, yes,
Okay.
we would. That's our goal, and, that's our hope. Yes, sir.
Just piggybacking on that, we've all learned from the Amber project and how long it's taking them to complete theirs. I would be really disappointed if this is not completed sooner than what they did.
Well, our plan, I think the Ambers, I'm not sure, but I think they build themselves. We work with general contractors, and we'll find, the best general contractors. My experience, I've been a builder and developer for, I hate to say it, almost 40 years now. And I'm finding some of the general contractors, I thought it was a decent builder. There's some really good general contractors out there that really could perform. And I see them building all over the community. Same guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask Mr. Savidan a question? Do we generally ask for the phasing of the construction on the drawings? Or how do you deal with that?
Do we, the planning commission, typically ask for it?
Or the engineering department?
Yeah, that's something that's addressed during final approval, just to make sure that everything's going to be coordinated and it's going to make sense. They coordinate the timing with construction access and issues like that.
Thank you very much.
I think we're ready for the vote.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Ms. Koopa?
Yes.
Mr. Sanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Bravo.
Thank you for a great-looking project.
Next agenda item is number 11, public comment for items on the current agenda. Okay, no one here wants to speak. And the last item on the agenda is planning commission comments. Let's start with Mr. Tagle.
I think we did a good job tonight. I don't know if the message was received by one of the petitioners, but I think we all shared things that needed to be shared, and so I was pleased with that.
Mr. Hudson?
No comment.
Mr. Evans?
I would just ask that the commissioners, if they haven't already attended one of the Civic Center campus talks.
That's a good point.
It's really important that you arm yourself with the facts and the ramifications of this this signature gathering agreement and what it will do to our charter and future city councils. I think we all ought to be having there was a great two-page summary, believe, by Lori Green-Blum. Is that true, Julie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
Excellent job, and I would ask that you reread that and make sure your neighbors and friends, before they sign this petition, are educated. Thank you.
Is that something that can be shared, the two-page summary?
Oh, it's public record, yes.
It was submitted to council on Monday, I believe.
Was that yesterday?
Yes.
Yes.
It's in the agenda package.
Mr. Edmonds, email me tomorrow and remind me to send it to the planning commission. I will.
I will definitely do that. Thank you.
Mr. Sanzika?
No comment.
Ms. Koopa?
Tomorrow is the last one, I believe, of the public sessions at 6 o'clock.
But they
at
may
the Troy.
schedule additional ones.
Okay, but for this phase, tomorrow, 6 o'clock. So if you want to see me again, come join me.
Ms. Cruz?
I would just concur with Mr. Tagle's comments. I mean, I think that tonight had a lot of challenges. I hope that the petitioners heard us loud and clear, and when they come back, we're able to be, again, unanimous in our decisions.
Mr. Crank.
Only thing, just to remind everyone, if they'd like to attend the One Stop Ready event, it's session or seminars tomorrow at the Oakland County Executive Building. It starts at 6. There's a little light dinner box dinner included, and it goes to 8:30, but it really gives you an idea of what there's a lot of communities there all throughout Oakland County come in. They give their perspective on how to process developments quickly, what they do in their communities especially to get things off the ground and moving. I think there's a lot of energy in that room. I think it's well worth the hour and a couple hours to spend there.
I'm sorry, I thought of one more thing. I know there are 4 of us going to the Mackinac Conference. Are we going to have a bus? Do we have a driver?
I'm working on the details.
Thank you.
Last call for attendance at MAP, September 27th, 28th, 29th. Is there anyone who?
Room for one more.
There's room for another one.
And is it October?
September 27th, 28th, 29th.
3 days. 3 days of fun
When do I
and
need to
learning.
let you know by?
Yesterday.
Oh.
Couple days.
You should go.
Depends on work.
Okay.
Don't look taking.
Ms. Carlisle?
Oh, just real quickly, I want to echo the comments made by Mr. Tagle and Ms. Cruz. I think the Planning Commission did an excellent job tonight. And also want to thank Mr. Faison for stepping up and chairing the meeting. You did an excellent job as well.
Oh, I would.
Yes.
I
agree.
You're here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That the sample over there is regarding the Somerset. Okay.
This is an example, and Mr. Tagle knows a lot more about this than I do, but this is an example of EFS and what one can do with EFS with some design flair. But I would defer to the expert, Mr. Tagle, with any questions related to EFS or related to the application on the Somerset Shops building.
Who brought that in?
I just want to know if John likes it. Have you seen it?
That sample? Or-
Yeah, yes.
That sample doesn't do a whole lot for me.
Okay.
What I was sharing with Brent earlier was that from where you're sitting, that looks just like a gray wall. What will articulate that and make it have a little bit more interest is how the joining pattern is and how the joints are created to create some shadow lines and really create some interest to it. I mean, that to me, it looks like it is attempting to be like a stone block, if you will. And if I remember, they're wanting to put these up on upper levels, which if that's what they're proposing, it's really, it's not very honest. You would never build stone up on a second level like they're saying. So I'm not impressed with that particular look there, but I think things could be done to enhance what it looks like.
But do you like the finish itself, which is considered to be a limestone finish or something?
Don, that's a tough question. Is it my first choice? No, but there is reason why it's as popular as it is, and yes, economy is one of the reasons, but that doesn't mean that when you take economic materials that you can't make them enhance a building or look nice or do a good job. So, that answers your question.
Sarah?
What does the Planning Commission think of myself working with Mr. Tagle to come up with a solution for that top element on the building?
With Mr.
Okay.
Tagle helping out, I'd say go for it, John. Go for it.
Okay. I hear consensus, thank you.
Yep.
There was a dissenting vote.
We all vote for you,
It doesn't
John.
matter.
Go ahead. Have at it.
And Mr. Frank?
I'm good, thank you.
And I just want to make one comment. Thank you, Ben, and just sitting in this seat, right, I saw the group, which I've always been impressed with, in a different light. I thought it was a good meeting. I thought it was a good dialogue. I thought, to your point, Karen, I thought if the applicant didn't get the message after today, right, they're just not going to get it. But I thought it was done in a constructive and respectful way. So it was a long meeting, but I thought a productive one.
Yep.
I hope Ali's not watching, he might get overthrown.
Are we adjourned?
Meeting adjourned.
Can I ask a question? I mean,